Call the meeting to order, City of University Heights City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, June 11th, 2019. And did Nick walk out too?
Yeah.
Okay, here. Now, the council's all present. All five are present tonight. Approval of minutes is first agenda item. Are there any additions or corrections to the May 14th regular council meeting or the April 28th work session? Hearing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Tonight, we have Kyle Austin here presenting the 2019-20 ICAP insurance renewal quotes. Welcome. Yeah, sure. Well, we can't really hear you. I don't know what's going on. Our assistant here will help you. Thanks, Virginia.
Hello. Everybody hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, so the renewal came up here. This is our third year with the ICAP program and IMWCA on the work comp. Again, just a quick reminder, ICAP stands for the Iowa Community Association pool, which all they do is insure city, municipalities, state boards, farms, stuff like, not farms, fair boards, stuff like that. So it's owned by the members. It's the best program, in my opinion, by far for it. So you can see a quick rundown. The rates have actually dropped this year. The pool has been performing very, very well. So the rates are down about $800 this year compared to last year. On top of this, ICAP also has a voucher every year that the city has been taking advantage of, where they give you $1,000 for safety equipment. So you factor that in on top of there, another $1,000 off. It's almost 10% of your premium you're getting back just alone right there. So again, they do that because it is designed for cities, municipalities, and their needs. So as far as the actual coverages themselves, not much has changed. I try to stay on top of it between Chris and Sylvia as far as if anything changes. The main exposure for the city obviously is just the buildings and then the police vehicles. So when stuff does change, I usually know about it relatively quickly. So just a quick overview of coverages there. You have $2 million of liability. That includes general liability, auto, law enforcement, public officials, all in there. So then we also have the vehicle coverage, property coverage, and some other policies in there too. So again, I don't know how in depth you want me to go. Does anybody have any questions on any of this, or?
Not yet.
Auto liability, for how many vehicles does that number reflect?
Sure. So I believe it's, well, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4. We were just going through it the other day. Go back to the schedule in here. It looks like we have 3 vehicles listed right now.
And Troy, Kyle, so when we get the new vehicles, make sure we get in touch with him, it sounds like.
Chris has already talked.
Okay, sounds good, thanks.
So this premium or this the total contribution will go up as a result of adding new vehicles.
Next fiscal year.
So how ICAP does it is kind of interesting. They will add it at renewal, so you could add 1 vehicle, or you could add 10 vehicles. They do not charge during the year. They do that because basically it's annoying to have to deal with that. Cities set their budget, and they don't want to say, hey, all of a sudden we're adding 5 vehicles, now we have to make another payment to ICAP. Most insurance companies would do that, but since ICAP is designed for municipalities, they say, hey, what does it get it next year when it comes up? So you have the coverage, but you don't pay for it till the next renewal going forward. But you don't have to pay back for it either. It just comes on at the next renewal.
Okay.
Now that also works the other way. If you would take 2 vehicles off, they wouldn't give you money back. It's just now most cities aren't, decreasing vehicles.
So your premium is locked down for the budget.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct. Yep. And that's by design because
Mhm.
obviously,
Sure, makes sense.
so.
Efficiencies.
So, any other questions on the ICAP piece? So again, this is basically everything other than the workers' compensation, which is the next policy, which I'll go through. So,
I just had a nitpicky
Sure.
couple of questions about the addresses that are on here.
sure.
It says West Side Drive.
That's a garage.
But it's Woodside Drive.
Okay.
And what's What's 901, the 901 Melrose
House.
house? Okay.
House what?
What house?
We had insurance on it, and then that was sold or transferred.
It was.
Oh,
Okay, so we can take
yeah,
that
I
off.
mean, that's why.
Yeah, we can get that
Needs to
taken
be
off,
on.
and get you the updated amount with all that, so before you pay it, so.
Right.
So you said the West Side Drive,
Woodside.
It's Woodside
Woodside.
Drive.
the 155?
Yep.
Okay. We'll get that changed. And then the house has been,
901.
The house doesn't exist anymore, so.
okay.
And the city never did own the real property, so.
Right, it was just the building, yeah, okay. And that would be location number 4, the 901 Melrose.
Doesn't
Okay,
exist.
okay, we'll get that taken off. We can get you an updated copy of it too, so. Okay. So that'll drop the premium even more then, so. Anything else?
Well, there is one more little address on the next, on the IMWCA. It has our old Melrose address. So.
Okay.
And yet the bills get here perfectly okay.
I'm sure the mailing is fine, it's probably just they haven't changed that. In that location, we still have some stores, or is that all gone now?
Underneath.
Well, there's a garage over
Is
there.
there anything in there anymore? We kept it on just for liability, because
Yeah, there's
it has to
things.
be listed to have liability coverage, and that's why it was on there, but
It holds evidence.
It's a
So-
garage, not an address.
and that's okay, but we just wanna make sure it's on there. There's no charge for having it on there for liability sense, but we just wanna have it on there, so that coverage extends to that. Because the liability is based on the budget actually for the city. You could have multiple locations.
Kyle,
that-
what's the city's radius for liability coverage? Is there a radius?
No,
Okay. Okay, thanks.
So that address is there to cover the garage.
Yeah.
right, so it'd be if somebody happened to get hurt in there, the city would have the liability coverage extend to the policy.
Okay, thank you.
So. Okay, so on to the work comp then, I guess. You can see, again, there's a lot of math on there. I'll try to explain it quickly how it works. So work comp is determined basically by the rates of the city. So if you look at there's the second, technically the fourth column, the second number column over from rate, there's payroll. To the left of that, you can see the class codes. You have police officers and drivers, reserve police officers, clerical, and appointed officials. The payroll ties to a certain class code, and that's how the rate is figured. On here, again, you can see the manual premium, if there was no discounts involved, would be $9,000. But because the city has done so well, right now your mod is a 0.9. And I've covered in the past, and I'll do it real quick again. A mod is basically your experience factor based on the last, it goes back 4 years, but it kicks out the most recent year, so it looks at the 3 years for that. Yeah, so, and basically on those class codes, they have what is called expected losses based on the national average. In this case, University Heights has done very well. The lowest possible mod you could have is a 0.9, and that's what you have. So basically, you're getting every discount possible because of your great loss history. So that alone right there takes off 10% of the premium, basically.
Ooh, good.
So a 1 would be average. If you were an over 1, say you're a 1.1, you'd actually be paying a 10% extra on top of it. But in this case, you're getting 10% discount. And then on top of that, because IMWCA has been doing so well for all the municipalities, they actually have other discounts listed on the back page too, the first page that we were on. If you really want to look through them. They have a longevity credit. Let's see, they have all these unique names for them. But yeah, longevity credit of 1%, another loss experience credit of 12%, for another discount of $1,000. So the manual premium would be $9,000, but in the end, the city's only paying $6,877 because of the favorable loss history. So again, I know it's a lot of math and insurance speak, so if you please, any questions, let me know. I know. But the short answer is the city is doing very, very well. You're getting all the discounts you can, so keep up the good work in that sense.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much,
I'll
Kyle.
get you the updated numbers with those changes in a couple days probably. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for finding them. Next, we're going to discuss the people who wanted to talk about ice cleared from sidewalks in the city in February. How many people want to talk about that? Just you, Jim? And I say that because we have public input later, and so this time we'll only speak about the snow removal and ice removal on sidewalks. So, Jim, would you like? No, I'm just saying public input for other subjects will be later. On the agenda, it's just a couple more down. So this will be just discussion about the sidewalk clearing. And do you want to speak about that? Now's the time to speak about it. Thanks, Jim. And I'm going to keep it to 5 minutes. Okay?
Hopefully it'll be less than that.
Okay, thank
First
you.
of all, my name is Jim Szymanski. I own the property at 52 Olive Court. It is managed by my son, who owns the property at 58 Olive Court and another one on Melrose Avenue. I don't have prepared remarks. I have only brought the invoice that I received on about May 8th, approximately 80 days after the actual cost was incurred that I knew nothing about. And I'll preface I don't have prepared remarks, but I'll preface my comment with that about this bill, that I grew up in a rental property. My mother and father never owned a home. And I'm the youngest of 7 children. Okay, so I know what it means to be a renter, and now that I own rental properties, I know what it means to be a landlord, okay? One of the things that I feel like here recently, I don't know, maybe I've owned rental properties in Iowa City since 1979. And one of the things I'm really feeling right now is that there's an adversarial relationship between city councils, whether it's Iowa City or University Heights, and landlords that is totally unnecessary. It's adversarial is a polite way of putting it. I feel like when I've been at these meetings talking about things related to the properties here, like I'm a convict, or I've been charged with something criminal. Okay, so that is a context and a backdrop. When I received this bill, first of all, in the lease, and as I think a lot of landlords do, even if this weren't in my lease, that the renters are supposed to mow the lawn and clear the sidewalk. And in the past, when I've told renters in the past, both in Iowa City and University Heights, if it's not done and a citation is issued, you're gonna pay it, because that's your responsibility. Now, the people in 52, as it turns out this last year, and they're still there, are very conscientious, very responsible people. When I finally received this bill and I alerted them to the fact that we got a $415 ice removal bill for a 50-foot sidewalk in front of that 52 Olive Court, they quickly said to me, look, and I can confirm this because in my own house up in Solon, I was confronted with the same thing. You couldn't even buy salt to put on sidewalks in February, in most of February. I personally made trips myself out to these places, Lowe's and Menards and Ace and so on. It would come in and it would be gone within hours when it came in. So they were at a real disadvantage, as was I at my own home. Fortunately, nobody comes to check my sidewalks because I live out in the country and I don't have sidewalks, but I have a driveway and my own sidewalks. So that's a context for it. But I guess what I want to say is that I'd like to think that this council is sort of looking out for my interests in some respects as a landlord, okay? To get a $415 bill to remove the ice from a sidewalk, I would say that before this was approved, this company, and I talked with Hawkeye Construction and Snow Removal, oh, well, we couldn't do anything, I didn't wanna send out men, we got a skid loader. The skid loader that I was charged $175 for, I know you can't rent it for that much for just an hour or something, but you can rent it for a whole day for $375. And I know there was more than one sidewalk on Olive Court that was cleared with that snow, with that skid loader. So back to I like to think that the city council is looking out a little bit for the property owners, whether it's a landlord or a resident occupant, to not allow this kind of charge. And if you're going to allow it in the future, I would like you to tell me how I can make an application to do the work, to get the contract. Because at $400, a 50-foot sidewalk, I have 15 grandkids, several of whom would like to work in the snow removal business. So that's what I'd like to say. I don't know if anything is going to be done about this, because this is exorbitant. This is outrageous to charge $415. No, I talked with the removal guy, the guy who owns the company. He says, well, you know, it was really hard to get that ice out and all that. Hey, I've removed a lot of ice in my own life. I know it's not easy work, but $415?
Are you about,
I am
it's
finished.
very
I
close.
would like some consideration
Okay.
of this. Either you make it to the council should make it, because I got the bill from you. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Mike, you wanted to speak?
Mike Ritchie, 20 Allen Court. I also got a bill on this thing here, and I'm not going to deny my obligation on this thing whatsoever. I was sent on this thing before and after pictures, and it shows that, you know, there was ice built up, and I got an email from Mark Phelps here from Hawkeye Construction that says that my place was cleared out, but snow had remelted or ice had remelted on this thing. He charged me $460 for this thing. From Arrow Rental was $175. I called Arrow Rental up. For a large skid loader, it cost $350, that's with trailer. For a smaller skid loader that would fit that 4-foot sidewalk was $250. And I've got pictures in my phone, which I'm not going to dig up at this time and stuff on here, but city council can all see these pictures at any time. The thing that I have the biggest problem with is that with the snow and all that stuff, you would think that a skid loader would leave some tracks on what they did. There was not a track one. He charged me for a skid loader that they did not use on this premise. He also said on a phone conversation that he had to come back the next day because he admitted that 20 Olive Court is the low point over there and water drains from every direction and things were melting. He even questioned whether somebody had a sump pump running that was refreezing, because he had to come back the second day and redo this thing again. You know, we have a 24-hour time limit on this thing, and like I said, I'm not trying to do away with my obligation on this thing. I paid the full amount, $460 on this thing, but all I'm saying is that the skid loader that he charged me for, and evidently charged for Mr. Szymanski on, he didn't use on my property. And when I called Arrow Rental and talked to him about the price on the skid loader, and he goes, well, why are you asking, you know, in the summer about this thing? I said, well, I was thinking about going in business on this thing. He goes, skid loaders won't work on ice. And that's what my biggest issue is with Hawkeye, is that I feel that they charged me for something that they didn't do. Thank you very much.
Did they charge you for coming back the next day also?
You know, Nick, it was $460. And from the time I talked with him, he said that he had to come back the second day and redo mine again. That there was water coming from someplace. He thought that there was a sump pump.
But you don't know if he,
Here's a letter that he sent me back. You know, and there was a little bit more in depth on the conversation that I had with him. And you know, I'm not saying that, you know, this wasn't a problem. But all I'm saying is that this here issue, I mean, and I don't know how many people got charged for a skid loader price, but I mean, Arrow Rental, when I talked to Arrow Rental, they said a skid loader won't work on ice, and that's what mine was ice from the before and after pictures. And I can dig them out on my phone. I'm not the most technical person. I saved them in here someplace and stuff. And it shows that these pictures, you know, ice And I asked him, I said, well, how much on this part did you go on 24-hour court? Because from the pictures, it looked like some of the blue ice that they threw down, the ice buster that they threw down was on 24-hour court. Because I wanted to ascertain that this wasn't being done on property that I didn't own. And when you shoot this picture up that they sent me, Nick, and I hope that the city council looks at this thing, you can shoot this picture all the way up 24 out of Olive Court on that side. And there's a lot of area that isn't cleaned up, and I don't know whether they were charged on this issue or not. But all I'm saying is that being charged for a skid loader, which I paid for and didn't argue about, they did not use the skid loader on there because there's not a skid loader track 1 out there.
I spoke with Mark Phelps and asked him to come to the meeting, and he's out of state until Thursday. We can get him on the phone if we need him tonight, but he's out of state. And who wants to start discussion on this? Stan, do you?
Well, I'll make a couple of points from my report. The first is that we were lenient with landlords earlier in the month when stores ran out of ice melt. That was around February 13th or so that all the stores in Johnson County were out. At that time, we did not cite any property owners for uncleared sidewalks. Later in the month, stores were plenty restocked, and by February 25th, stores were stocked with ice melt. What happened is we had a couple of warm days over the weekend. Water started flowing and froze solid when we got cold again. What kicked off this round of ice clearing is that I started getting calls on the morning of February 25th from residents in town saying, I'm looking out my window and I'm watching pedestrians walking to work, and every pedestrian is falling on the ice as they go down Kozer Avenue. So I went out and checked out the situation myself, and I saw pedestrians all over town falling on the ice. So, Mr. Szymanski, if you want to talk about the city looking out for your interests, we're protecting you from a personal injury lawsuit here, which would cost you a lot more than $400. Earlier in the month, it was around February 13th, stores were out of ice melt. We did not issue citations or, compel. So that happened. Stores ran out of ice melt. It was difficult for people to get their walks clear. That was earlier in the month. Stores were restocked by the weekend of February 23rd. So this was just pure public safety. We cannot have people falling on the ice. And it was literally every pedestrian falling on the ice. And so when we hear about rental issues, the number one thing we hear over and over is, why don't you enforce your rules? This is what it looks like.
And this wasn't just rentals, though. This was
No,
everybody.
there were 23 properties total. 2 of them were owner-occupied properties. That is, that's the breakdown of what it looked like.
I think that all makes sense 100%. I guess my concern is just the charge, the skid loader charge. I guess I don't know if it's our position.
I asked Mark about that. He said that, yeah, they had to rent a skid loader, they had to rent a couple of buckets, attachments, and buy a couple of pieces of equipment to get the job done, and then they split that equipment cost evenly among the properties that it was used on.
Just a quick question. I know in Iowa City, and they may have changed it as well, that there was a policy, and I had, over the years, gotten letters
That's right.
saying, your snow needs to be removed. We don't do that here in University Heights?
And that's what
Not when people are getting hurt.
Pardon?
Not when people are getting hurt.
No.
I'm going to pick up on Jim. Jim, I'm going to pick that one up because the last councils that this is my 3rd term. And in the last 2, we had courtesy notices that were issued. Not once did any of those 2 prior council bodies discuss emergencies. So I've got 2 questions. What was the process? Did we follow the process? Where's the process in writing? Can somebody give Jim and anybody else a copy of what that process is? Because otherwise, council to council, it keeps changing. And we need process in this. And however we enforce the rules, there has to be an administrative process, no matter how cumbersome it is. For example, Jim, you said that your tenants are rather responsible, that you have contractually passed on the responsibility of doing this, right? So if they had been receiving a knock at the door saying, hey, you have emergency now, go clean it, or if nobody's responding, you could have left a note or something. So my concern is not so much that we're looking after anybody else's interest, is are we following a process to enforce the city rules? That's what I want to know tonight, because this is probably the first time that I hear that so many of these tickets are being challenged. I thought we had a process, and I want to
Yeah, I
stand
don't
by
know
the city
process.
process.
I would appreciate that. I think also, just a minor note, in the past, I'd get a letter. Well, obviously, a letter takes 1, 2, 3 days.
And under
then
emergency
that's a problem. That's a
circumstances,
problem. I
right?
understand that, okay? But a note on, if somebody goes to see that there's ice on that sidewalk, it's another 25 feet to the front door, leave a thing, just like UPS would leave a thing saying, you got a delivery. And if that note was, if a note like that was left, they didn't do it, I'd be charging them to not respond. They could call me if they couldn't do it. I would take care of it. I'm a very responsible person on all those kinds of things, and I appreciate what you're saying, but just, I'd like to know what the policy is.
Well, since you asked the question, ordinance number 82 as amended, number 2, in the event a property owner does not remove natural accumulations of snow and ice within 24 hours, the city may, at the direction of the mayor, city engineer, or such other person as may be designated, have the snow and ice accumulations removed without notice to the property owner and assess the costs against the property owner for collection in the same manner as a property tax. And it was also in the resident guide, Sylvia.
Does
Perfect.
the next
Well,
item
hold on a
down
minute,
not also
because-
mention a
because
fine
Lisa-
that we are authorized to assess and we did not assess this time? I mean, next time I'll assess the fine.
No, because, I think Lisa's point is well taken. Thank you for reading the ordinance, because the 24-hour period notice starts somewhere. And it's generally when notice is delivered to somebody.
It's not a notice.
It says,
It's-
hold on, it starts
No,
with
it is not a
24
notice.
hours.
24 hours
Of what?
after snowfall
Of what?
stops, you have to remove the ice. We
And then-
all know that,
We
I
all do.
believe.
We all do. The
And
question-
then who goes to the door and posts the notice?
There is no notice without notice.
I don't know what the
It
back
says
off-
right, I read it,
Lisa,
without notice.
Lisa, let me speak.
Without
But
notice.
when
I
it
don't know.
flips from being traditional snow removal to emergency,
Right.
and who decides it's an emergency?
Who's a designee? Is a councilwoman an appropriate designee?
Yeah.
I don't think
Did I
we need
read
a
it?
finding of emergency. I mean,
Did I read it?
Yeah, I think it just needs to happen. I guess for me, I was not concerned about the process. I just didn't know that, the skid loader fee, if he really did have those expenses and divided them, I mean, that generally makes sense, I guess. I just don't know if we need to ask for documentation on that, or if we're comfortable just saying that was spread around. I mean,
Well, I'm more concerned about one entity saying that instrument or modality works on ice, and another one saying it doesn't work. So, who's telling the truth here? If it doesn't work, then why are we charging or billing for
see
it?
him work
Yeah.
on it.
I saw.
This is what Arrow Rental told me.
Okay.
I would just,
I saw him using the skid loader.
He might have, but the Arrow Rental told me, quite frankly, the skid loader will not work on ice.
well, it sounds like he had a lot of different
I would-
equipment, and then maybe, he just
And
used
a lot of
various equipment on
workers.
different places and just spread the cost of the equipment, I think is what I'm hearing. I think we're gonna get him on the phone just to,
And I can show you the pictures and stuff on my property that they sent before and after, and there's not a skid loader track on my property.
See,
On the before after pictures, that's the part that got me.
this is exactly why the city needs to have a process after its ordinance that goes after details, because we should have better documentation other than
Let's
he
have
said,
Dottie
she said.
draft a process for the next meeting then.
And let's
The ordinance currently worded that after a snowfall.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do, this is all ice.
No, it
This
says
is
natural
ice.
accumulation.
Accumulation
Of
of
what?
snow, though.
Yeah.
This
No,
is
it doesn't.
Snow and ice. It says snow and ice.
It says natural
Okay,
accumulation
but
of snow and ice.
Again, this is, the fact that there is no notice is very, very adversarial. A note on, a note on the door, whoever said this sidewalk is dangerous was there and could easily put a note on that door.
Louise, I'm ready to get him on the phone and move on from public input at this point. I'd like to ask that question.
Do we really need to be asking our vendor a question? It's pretty insulting.
We can follow up later too. If he's not.
No, this is a public meeting, I think, but I'm just thinking, hey,
Let's
if he
solve the
needed
problem.
that.
Okay, it's ringing now.
Well, I think if the Streets and Sidewalks Chair is unhappy with how this was handled, I'd love to see a policy
Hey, Mark,
drafted for next
it's
month.
Louise Fromm. We're in the
Yeah.
council meeting.
Would you like to take that on,
And
Dottie?
I want to
That'd be great.
put
Thank
you on
I
the
will.
phone,
I'll help Dottie because this is way too
because
important.
The council
We've got
wants
to
to ask
have.
you questions about.
And then we
have
need
to
to
have-
designate
what
someone
work you
who's
did
That's
on the
right.
sidewalks.
That's right.
Okay?
We need to have
Okay,
a process
I'm gonna-
that's clear.
I have you on
Precise.
speaker
How could it
now.
be any clearer than what
Okay,
it
I
says?
have Mark Phelps. Can you speak now, Mark?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Would you mind just asking him about the?
What is your question?
Yeah, let's just hand
Hey,
the
Mark,
phone.
this is Nick Herbold. We had a couple individuals say that they had basically a skid steer sort of fee on their ice removal bill. And there was just concern about the reasonableness of that fee, and I was just wondering if you could speak on that.
Okay, well, it depends upon which property we were at. Some of them did, some of them didn't. But on the average, most of those ones that we worked on had anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of ice on there, and there is no way we were getting rid of ice by manually chopping it by hand. That would have taken us close to 6 and 8 hours per lot or address that we were on.
I totally understand that. I was just wondering, so would you mind just speaking on what equipment you had to rent
And what it does.
And what's the skid?
We rented 2 mini track loaders, and we didn't charge anybody the damage fee on them or the trailer fee. So one was $175, and the other one was, I believe, $225 from 2 different vendors. And then when you rent those, it doesn't come with any attachment. We had to come up with attachments to put on there because they won't let us destroy buckets and chipping off ice, like taking rocks off.
Gotcha. How many properties do you think you used those on?
I think about 20. Oh, total? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look.
Just the rental equipment. Do you know how many properties you used that on?
Probably about 16 or 17, because some of them didn't have it. We had them for 3 days.
Okay.
Can you hang on a little while, Mark?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. So,
So it sounds like he had tracked
council wants to.
sorts of skid steers with implements and had them for 3 days. And then, he's saying he split the cost among the properties.
My difference was here for 3 days, 225, one spread of 75 is 400 times 3 is 1,200. And if you did it on 16 properties, that's $75 a person.
No, but he had to purchase the buckets additionally. He had to purchase the bucket attachments.
Are we going to really go through this?
So you were saying the cost of the skid steers. So you're talking about the implements that you had to get to not damage the rental implements.
Well, we damaged one, and they wouldn't let me have another one, so we had to buy 2 more buckets.
Okay. I think I've
Because
gone.
they're not designed to do what we wanted to do, and we were given the task to efficiently remove that in the fastest time possible. And if you figure it out,
How many men?
a few people there for 6 and 8 hours manually chipping, and you scratch your sidewalks when you use an ice chipper, I don't believe we did any damage to anybody's sidewalk.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just remember talking to Stan about how it was quite a process because they were on my street and there were a number of them and it looked like very thick ice and a lot of work.
And the
How many
problem is they
workers did
don't
you have?
clear the ice at the first
3 on each
snow.
team.
3 workers on each team.
Right. I think the longest one took us 2 hours, and the shortest one was under an hour.
Okay. Do you do work for Iowa City?
No, I don't.
Just wondered. I know you do parking lots for the university, correct?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
We use a completely different piece of equipment because the loaders and skid loaders that we have will not fit down the sidewalk. And we couldn't be on anybody's property and do damage to the lawns or anything else. So those machines are just under 4 feet wide.
I see. Thank you. So what does council want to do?
As chair of Streets and Sidewalks, I will assume the responsibility of looking at this ordinance, tightening it if we need to, figuring out how to implement the process, and try to put someone responsible in charge of seeing that when the snowfalls occur, that we're moving forward on it, because there's no reason. I think if a landlord, and just the rental properties, if the landlord explained carefully to the tenant that this is your responsibility, and whether you're familiar with Iowa weather or not, that first snowfall you get out there and you scrape those sidewalks, because if it starts to layer, you're doomed, because it becomes impossible or nearly impossible once it's 3 or 4 inches thick for an individual to clear it. So I think there's education involved, and I think the community needs to be informed appropriately. And the ordinance is there, so it's a matter of how we implement.
It's in the ordinance, it's in the resident guide, it's in the rental property brochures.
But it's still not, when it happens, it's a crisis event. So we have to draw their attention to it, maybe in the beginning of the season again.
Stan put something on Nextdoor at
on the
beginning of
website, on Nextdoor,
And you probably said
make it
something to all the
a,
landlords too,
a
right?
Facebook issue so that it doesn't happen again.
That's for, that's for
One
the,
last comment. I agree with everything you're saying, except for how can you give a contractor carte blanche? He could have submitted a
Oh,
$1,000 bill to me.
no,
I wait, and I would say I agree with that point in general, that that I was curious about the fees. What he said to me makes me feel better. We did have snow melt back in stores. Getting ice scraped away like that manually, I would imagine would take that long. The damage to equipment to me makes sense. So I mean, I feel like I've done to the extent there is a duty, which I don't really know that there I guess fully is. In for me personally, well, to the extent there's a duty, his answers were helpful to me. I just think that with that much ice, that much ice accumulated, it would be, I think understandable that you may damage equipment, need to rent equipment, need to have, multiple people working on each team. But, and that's why I thought making the call and bothering him while he's on vacation
but
or whatever the case may be.
before that happens, maybe in the beginning of the season, in the fall, before the first snowfall, Mark Phelps should come to council and he should talk to the citizens, which will be on television then. And we can also put it on the website so that people, all of us, understand the process that will evolve and the cost if you don't comply with the ordinance. And I think that's all that we can do.
That's right. And
And I think we did that, and I recall even Stan talking in a meeting about snow removal. So I think all of this was
where's
done.
the policy? We should post the policy.
Well, write a policy,
with the
but we
ordinance.
did it without a policy.
And if you don't,
We have the ordinance.
Yeah,
Gotta fine
there's an
'em.
ordinance.
I appreciate this being brought to council, but I'm ready to move on it.
So am I.
Okay, thank you, Mark, very much for being available.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you for being
And
available.
it's also part of the
Goodbye.
information disclosure.
Have a
form.
nice
I'm
vacation.
sorry, I can't hear.
It's part of the information disclosure form that each tenant is supposed to be.
Yeah,
given.
yeah,
I mean, it's.
No,
multiple places.
we're good.
It is.
yeah.
Thank you.
But it's still,
Yeah,
despite all that,
Very
no, you can't claim
You know.
ignorance here.
Well, Dottie, you can knock on every door.
Nobody can.
Okay,
I think not.
so now we're going to discuss issuing new rental
Actually,
permits.
I have one question
Oh,
for
you do?
Stan. Stan, what Virginia did, how much of a departure was that from what you would have done or have done in the prior winter season? How much of a departure?
At that point on February 28th, and with people falling, none. We had given courtesy notices earlier in the season when we had snowfalls. The first snowfall, we had 3 houses that hadn't cleared. I made some calls. found out that contractors hadn't geared up. People had made arrangements, but they hadn't gotten out there. As we went on, we had a few instances where there was a couple houses here and there. We did give those courtesy notices, but by February 28th, we were done with Nextdoor post, with website post, with Facebook post. It was time. You knew what your responsibility was by the 28th of February.
And several of those houses, sorry, Stan, but several of those houses were not new that year tenants. They'd been there, one for 2 years, one for the previous years. They knew this.
I'd like to ask Jim and Mike Ritchie to come up here and tell us if you received any of those earlier notices to confirm that your tenants or yourself did.
Can we move on? Can we move
Did you not read the information disclosure form when you had your tenant sign it?
I don't know what you're referring to, what?
That's fine. No.
The information disclosure form.
The form that you're supposed to be signing with your tenants at the
Yes.
time of lease. So you did not read in there about snow removal.
I read everything.
Sure.
Do I remember everything in that?
Okay.
Absolutely not.
So when should we have notified you about the snow removal?
A note on the door would have been
Uh-huh.
okay.
Okay.
You're talking about
I'm-
the 28th? This was already done on the 26th. You're talking about a 3-day snow removal period? So apparently, if it was the 26th, 27th, 28th, I got nailed the first day with no notice. I would have done that sidewalk, plain and simple.
You should have.
You're right, I should have.
Okay,
I'm
can we
I'm
move
really
on
bothered
now?
by this discussion
I
of
re-
like,
we
we need
need to
more
get done
courtesy
with this
notices. Okay.
Meeting.
I'm sorry, we want to get done with this meeting by 9. A few people told me they have to leave. So let's discuss council direction on issuing new rental permits with city housing inspector. And Stan, did you want to start? Because
Yeah,
you had it.
Thanks for everybody that got me their thoughts on this. I've compiled it. It's kind of a lengthy document, and I got to you late. I apologize for that. I was working on some other things as well.
Do you want it up?
Yeah, you can put it up. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to move forward on this. I think it's important not to look at this as we're doing everything on this list, but this is talking points to start. So I'm looking for,
Do you have a hard copy for me,
I do.
Stan?
I have. Oh, sorry for that. I'm looking for some guidance on how to proceed and how council wants to proceed. I'm not sure tonight is the best opportunity to sit and hash through all of this. I understand there's a desire to move forward with this quickly. I think it's important that as we go through
To do
this,
it right.
that we take some time and do our due diligence on it, because the more I think of some of these, there's negative externalities with them. I think it's important to make sure that there's not bias in what we're doing as well. So those are all things to consider, and I know I got it late in, so
Are you thinking we need a work session, maybe?
I think
Yeah.
we discussed a work
Yes.
session in the past. I think that would be a good place to start. I've broken them out into categories. Essentially, I call it exterior biologic, which there's a lot of concern about yard and lawn maintenance, exterior. The interesting thing is, as you go through some of this, our existing ordinance has covered some of this. We're only a year into our initial enforcement of the changes that we made already. So there are certain areas of the community that haven't had that full extent of that inspection. The parking issues, that's an interesting one. There seems to be some concern on the council about the amount of paving on parking and on properties. I think the trash and recycling will be an interesting one as we move to new tippy carts and we end up with larger carts sitting out in front of houses. I think we're going to want to get in front of that. There's some housing safety issues. There was some push for some affordable housing and home ownership opportunities. Some ideas that I put into quality of life issues, use of technology, and then again there is a push for more enforcement and more documentation. So Troy Kelsey and I did meet, and I think we have some ideas of how to move forward using existing resources. And we have officers that are in in the community on a daily basis, and I think we can use some of their resources in a way that's not obtrusive. I would caution about having police officers enforcing code. I just don't think it's a good first impression for a police officer to have to introduce themselves to a citizen to tell them they need to mow their lawn or move back a trash can. But we can, if they can handle some of the documentation for me, it simplifies that process a lot. And then we got into, we already have things on the books about, disorderly house and conduct of the tenants, having an effect on their rental property. And we're fortunate that we haven't had a lot of incidences that have risen to that level, but that's where I'm at.
So I think we should probably have a work session to go through this list, and I wonder if you could, Stan, do a little more background research on the items in here before that work session. So
And
if there are things that are illegal, we can't do whatever, like that needs to be noted so that we're not considering those options. If there are things that are already taken care of by the ICPM, that needs to be noted that those are already in progress.
And I have some of that as far as what are affordable housing and home ownership options. There's a lot of communities that are starting to do that.
And Stan, policy issues, I just don't believe that we should be spending extreme expenses trying to research policy issues. And I've noticed that legal has been tasked to do a number of things, not necessarily by you, but there are some areas that should squarely belong in somebody's homework bin and not with legal. So I'm conscientious of that budget, so let's keep
There's
policy.
certain things that legal will have to answer
Yeah.
for
Sure,
me because
I don't disagree, but I'm just saying,
yep.
when it comes to policy,
Yep, because
educational.
if we end up having to defend any of this in court, I
It'll
have to have
cost more.
a legal team that is.
Well, generally the carrier would respond, so I'm not worried about that. Litigation carrier, we got a premium that covers us.
How long do you need to prep this before?
I have some of that done.
A couple
so-
weeks?
No, week and
week.
a half.
Week and a half.
2 weeks would be fine. I mean, no longer than 2 weeks. Do you have any other work sessions coming up or?
No. So today's the 11th. That week of the 24th is bad for me,
Me too.
that whole week. Otherwise, next week, 17, 18, 19, 20, that's better. And then, we run into 4th of July. But we still have, I don't know.
So the other thing that I can do is I can get out some of that documentation early, and I can get out some of my thoughts on where we might run into some pitfalls. I can get that out in the next 2 weeks. And do you want to set something after that, or do you want to move?
I can do July 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. Is anybody around then? No, of July, yeah. I can do the 3rd week onward. Is everybody out of town?
The 3rd week.
I don't have my calendar,
July?
so I'm not sure.
I can do the,
Of July?
I'm leaving on the 18th, but I have
So you
15,
can't-
16,
Are
17.
you out before the next meeting? No. When are you available?
I can do 15, 16, or 17 of July. Then I'm out.
Okay. That's after the July meeting.
Right.
That's the problem.
Well, that'd be okay. We're gonna need more time anyhow.
So does that work with anyone out there schedules?
What was the date? I didn't hear that.
You're around?
What was the
When?
date?
Oh, 15, 16, 17 of July?
Yeah, or earlier in the week is better for me. I can do that.
So 15 or
15
16?
maybe.
Yes, I see yes. And it's okay for you and Dottie?
I don't know, I don't have my calendar here.
Well, let's say July 15th, the Monday. Is that what I have, Monday?
Yes.
Yeah, 7 o'clock, July 15th. And Stan will have things out before then too, by a long ways.
And I wanted to have some other discussion just briefly. I think that enforcement of our current ordinances before then could really help inform what changes we need. So I think, there are some things that we've been talking about that I think are already violations of ordinances. And I guess I would just be curious to know if there's anything we can do before that meeting to really enforce the current ordinances so that when we go into it, we know, what needs to be changed or if just enforcement of it. I hear people talk about lawn. If we really, hit that hard, maybe we'll go into it and say, well, since, over the last month, it's been fine. Or I know we had a lot of rain and the grass was growing fast.
I don't think we should change anything until we come out with the new proposals.
I'm not saying change any ordinances. I'm just saying
Enforce
the current ordinances.
But that's assuming we haven't been.
Well, I'm just saying there's some that I think direction would be good. I don't know if the chief wants to speak, but, we have issues about, where you can park cars and, I don't know if maybe that needs to be changed to enforce it. I know we talked a little bit about 1251 Melrose and not providing the information, the spreadsheet that, Chris sends out. It still has a previous owner on it. We don't have tenant information, is my understanding, from the landlord, from the current landlord. Yep. So, I mean, those sorts of things, I would just be curious to have a discussion briefly about, what we can do or can't do now.
That landlord has been provided written a notice of violation that he's out of compliance, was told to provide the information to the city clerk, and it's my understanding that has he reached out to you at all?
I haven't got a message or an email.
Right, yeah.
So what do we do in that situation?
That's, some guidance would be good.
So what's the penalty? Do we have a penalty then at that point?
We can revoke or not renew his rental permit.
I know we talked about, I think Virginia maybe had talked about this, or someone had brought up when we were doing this, like we're going to enforce these deadlines pretty strictly. Do you recall that discussion?
Yeah, we didn't have any problems with it last summer, and so I would say
Yeah,
that
at this point with no-
particular property is
Yep.
pretty clearly not
Yeah,
going to
he's
be able
been
to
given
renew their
a second
permit.
opportunity. There's been no response. It's not a.
So I mean, that seems really cut and dry to me. They're not eligible for renewal.
Steve, can you work with me on what that looks like?
You bet.
Okay. There was an additional property in town that had a series of complaints against it, founded complaints, snow removal, trash, grass. That will be resolved here shortly. The tenants were removed and the property will be for sale. And that will end that enforcement action.
I just wanted to make one comment. One of the suggestions that I have requested that we look into is that we leverage the technology that's in use by Iowa City to document complaints, not just complaints from the housing inspector or the PD, but from residents who are, looking around and also tabulating complaints. I think as the city will be lifting the cap, it'll become important that we have an objective, systematic approach to how we receive complaints, how they're processed in a system. I think we need to get away from Excel files and emails and move into a more organized, systematic process. And Iowa City has a rental complaint tracking system. And I would like, before the working session, that if this council just preliminarily agrees to give direction to Stan to get us information as to what that technology support might look like, it would be part of our website. So residents can place complaints. Anybody who's walking around town with a cell phone and has an issue, they can lodge their complaint. And we have evidence, which is the most important thing at this program. We need to be evidenced and data-driven.
Is that program like a public purchase program? Is that indigenous to Iowa
It
City?
was purchased by Iowa City. It's under contract.
But we can do a 28E agreement.
Sure you could, but unfortunately, that's a contract with a private entity and we're in a long-term contract at a pretty favorable rate for Iowa City. And they have no you can ask for cost, but the county also has the same system. You might want to
Yeah.
look at asking the county if they could,
I can help you with that.
It's, well, it's not, yes.
My concern is that technology is here to help us.
Yeah.
And to conserve the cities. It's to protect,
But if
and
we can do
our-
it with another public entity, that
that's
is
it.
fine.
That's fine.
But I wouldn't want to get into the weeds with,
No, I think it's part of the discussion, and we have to start the research now. If we're serious about coming up with a program that's going to be fair in application for everyone, we need technical support.
well, not just reporting violations, but I'm concerned about
No,
then
it's the process.
what do we do after
That's
we have
right.
the report?
That's the beauty of this
And who
technology.
checks on that?
And not exactly. And that's why we want something like this technology to assist us.
So you're going to look into the county, right?
I will contact the county, and just to make sure we have a comparator, I will also ask Iowa City. Now, for that, the city administrator, Fruin, is going to want to hear that this council gave their okay. So can I take a general motion that I place an inquiry around technology for a complaint system from both of these municipal entities?
Well, I would rely on Stan's assessment of,
Well, he'll be asked the same thing too, unless,
because he's already explained the problem with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't you say there was a problem with
there is.
asking
I
Iowa
mean,
City?
We can
any
ask, but it-
expansion to that for Iowa City will result in our costs going through the roof. So, I mean, you can ask, but I'm
how about if I just ask for the contact, see how that goes?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. That's it. No motion needed, thank you.
All right, I had one other quick question. Lisa had brought up, I think, that there was an issue with burning ordinance, and I didn't know if Steve could speak on that. There was an issue also, I think, at 1251 of fires being set in the backyard, and it sounded like there may be a tweak we need to have to the ordinance so that it's, I don't know if it's a right to counsel issue or something had come up in that regard.
Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Well, I was just curious. I think there was a charge that was dismissed for burning.
Well, didn't you say it was resolved?
It was all resolved and nothing has happened since. So
Oh, okay.
it-
I just didn't know if the
it's
ordinance in
done.
general was a.
So I believe there was some discussion before the meeting. So
Oh, I wasn't in on.
I didn't hear it.
I wasn't in on it, and I'm curious, what is this?
I don't, I mean, the ordinance prohibits open burning, so this has been in, I don't know when the council adopted this, I can look. It was quite a while.
Burning of what, leaves, tires, what are we talking about,
Anything.
refuse?
Yeah, yeah, all those things for sure. The excluded, so open burning of the following types may be permitted, so, well, let me strike that.
So you have but you have
Right.
grilling and you
Ex-
have all of those things.
Except as otherwise provided, no person shall ignite, light, have an open fire. And then it says there are exceptions, a ceremonial or controlled bonfire,
What about a burning pit, where they,
like a
Sti-
fire
yeah.
pit.
Uh-huh.
I think that's probably permitted.
Yeah.
Open burning of rubbish, including yard waste, after a natural disaster. Some fire for training purposes. Outdoor cooking is permitted.
Mm-hmm. So it's a fine line.
That's about it.
So I think the problem was the violation of this ordinance shall be a simple misdemeanor. If you're convicted, you'll be subject to punishment for up
Yeah.
to 30 days in jail and a fine of up to $100, which then resulted in something else that I was not privy to.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I don't know I think somebody else in my office took a call on this, and that may be somebody I need to consult with. I don't know what the circumstances were. This is drafted as a simple misdemeanor, not municipal infraction. There may have been a question about what evidence existed because there's more evidence required to convict somebody of a criminal
Who issued the misdemeanor?
action. I don't know that it was issued, but yeah.
Yeah, Troy's going to speak to it.
In this particular incident, it is a rental property, but it is also an assisted living home. The people who are placed there, the residents there, are challenged in various ways. That is also true of the person who was starting this fire. We did have contact with him. The officer really had no intention to write a citation. He was trying to be sensitive to the issues, to gain compliance. The person that he was dealing with actually insisted that he be given a citation. He was cited. There was conversation then between that officer and a member of Steve's office, and the decision was made to go retrieve that citation. But as Lisa said, it has gained compliance. The behavior has been modified. It hasn't repeated. It was, if I'm remembering correctly, and I wasn't involved in that call, but it was filed as a municipal infraction, and perhaps that was the issue. I'm not certain. But again, typically we would do education before we would charge. Again, the idea is to gain compliance and try to do it in a conversation with someone instead of at them. But that's the basic circumstances of this particular item associated with that residence. Any questions?
I see.
Thank you.
I have one question since we're moving into providing Stan with guidance to work in part with legal. Steve, I need to ask you, your budget for the rental program is at $7,500. That is at $200 an hour, only 37 and a half units of time. Is that sufficient?
I mean, it just depends where everything goes. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that it's sufficient to do everything that the
You don't-
council has in mind.
Do you have a number that might give us a better sense, a buffer?
I think if you can give me a better sense of what we're going to do, I'll have a better idea to give
totally
you a
depends on how
buffer.
much
Well,
I'm sorry to
we
answer
need
that.
to, and the reason I ask this is because we need to figure out, give guidance to Chris for the upcoming year. And these costs have been astronomical in other terms when we have been discussing the rental program, and the city's general fund is absorbing this. So I'd like to make sure that we're keeping and drawing from the right funds as opposed to having this being borne by the general fund.
We set a policy on that last year for setting of rental permit fees.
150.
But it had to be, if there was gonna be a change, it had to be done by a certain time to,
I don't remember all the specifics off the top of my head.
there's a
but
policy for
yes.
that. There's a time frame to alleviate pressure on the clerk getting that information out.
That's why I'm asking now. Would it
It's-
be
it's
better to,
passed.
would it be better
I thought
to?
it was in May.
Yeah. We set that policy last year.
And currently, we have 249 permits at $150 is $37,350 total dollars.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so we're setting July 15th at 7 p.m., and you have some direction
I have
there,
some
Stan.
direction already. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go on to public input. Would anyone like to speak? Okay, John Irvine, would you like to speak first?
Hi, I'm John Irvine from 6 Lemur. I had to prepare some of this stuff because I keep finding myself too angry to relay some of my thoughts when I'm up here, when I'm winging it. The bill that was signed into law regarding the rental caps states, "A city shall not adopt or enforce any regulation, restriction, or other ordinance related to residential property rental permit caps on single-family homes or duplexes." The fact that you haven't allowed any new rental permits and are discussing additional restrictions is violating this law. Sure, the moratorium has given you an extension to brainstorm new ideas for your authoritarian think tank, but the fact remains none of you have shown a backbone as a leader and realized that what you're doing is wrong. You've mentioned exploring loopholes with strict timelines and will inquire about what it takes to revoke rental permits, but this would fall under additional regulation and restriction, which is again violating this law. Additionally, what do you expect the hotel environment to be during football season? It seems like you're fine with that, so how can you turn around and then say rental houses should be the concern? That hotel is going to have people who have no responsibility to the town, aesthetic, they pay no property taxes, and they're here for less time and will no doubt find themselves in situations where they can trash the area. As long as they don't ruin the rooms, they have no accountability whatsoever to the area. Why is this not more important to focus on than new rental permits? I've heard the council's commentary on additional restrictions with lawns and siding, but why should the council presume to know the homeowner or landlord's intent and financial means of fixing the issue? Perhaps they are saving up to fix the issue in the future. Virginia, why should you be able to dictate that timeline? As a diverse community, surely we shouldn't expect all residents to be exactly like you. Regarding comments about mold, why are these concerns being brought up now? Why isn't Dottie's rental property being given the same scrutiny and criticism right now. And Dottie, how can you vote against additional rental properties when you own a rental property yourself? As it currently stands, you can maintain or raise your price without additional competition in rental housing. Please explain to me how this is not a conflict of interest. If safety was indeed a primary concern, as I've heard Sylvia say on numerous occasions, why is this mold maintenance issue only being brought up when the rental caps were found to be illegal? It seems to be convenient timing that you're using to justify more discriminatory practices of young people, renters, and landlords. Furthermore, how does this council feel about its practices becoming illegal in the first place? Do you have any sense of embarrassment or responsibility? Let me reiterate. Your previous actions on this matter as leaders of this city are now illegal. I'm guessing this fact hasn't registered because you continue to press on with punitive restrictions and regulations. The most ridiculous of them that I've heard is the suggestion that the public has a right to see which properties have a rental permit. Why does the public have a right to know anything about someone else's property and who lives there? Having a map of rental properties is unfair in nature, assumes that all messy properties are rentals, and would enable the community to focus unnecessary attention and potentially violate the privacy of tenants. This elitist mentality doesn't enhance the community, it divides it. The last thing landlords need in this area is an ongoing witch hunt where the city council lights the torches and hands out the pitchforks. I'd also like to point out the blatant contradictions in principles and values that this council continues to demonstrate. There have been numerous mentions about preserving open space in the context of rental housing driveways, while council members are actively trying to sell pieces of the Switcher Tract to their friends. There's still discussion about forcing residents to fix up yards and driveways when you aren't fixing the roads. You're framing your actions as being in the best interest of the city, but this is a farce. You're meddling in real estate that doesn't belong to you, not performing your civic duties with the taxes that are being paid, and borrowing money to ensure at least one of the council members gets to live next to a park. From where I'm standing, you're only operating in your own best interests. I've yet to witness any members of the general community show up to these meetings and advocate for discrimination against young people, renters who can't afford to buy a home, and landlords. And I'm assuming that's because not many people want to be the face of discrimination or illegal practices. But at least we have you. I've been coming here to speak to you for a long time now. I pay over $5,000 in property taxes to a city that doesn't perform basic road maintenance. You would think at the very least I'd be taken seriously as a resident, willing to appear in public and express concern about the direction of this irresponsible council.
Thank you, John. Mike, you wanted to speak to the council?
This is about the rental issue and stuff. One of the reasons why, what I've read, that the Iowa State Legislature did away with these rental caps was because of it was too much stringent regulation on this thing, is what I've read. And I've read Sylvia's comments that she wrote for this thing in Nick's today and stuff. And when it gets right down to it with rentals and stuff, we just had an assessment where property values went up quite a bit, and we've talked about this in past council meetings. So it's gotten to the point, in my opinion, that a person's not going to come in here and buy a property at the value that the Johnson County has put on these things. And when you take in your property taxes and your insurance and stuff, you're not going to be able to get that kind of rent to break even with that mortgage. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? I mean, I can show you my numbers, and I bought my house 20 Olive Court 5 years ago. And I'm in a different circumstance because I got a daughter living there that doesn't pay any rent. So, but even if she was, you know, I would come up $15 short. So I think that what we're doing here on all this stuff with coming up with all this game plan is we're really overreacting. And I urge the city council to sit back and wait to see what happens on this thing. You know, University Heights has a track record. When Iowa City, we had this occupancy rule. Iowa City was 2 non-related. University Heights was 1. And then when they did away with that ordinance and stuff, we came up here with these rental caps. Iowa City and all these other municipalities went to 30% rental cap. Iowa City goes to 20%. we come up with this boarding house rule that I've always felt offensive over this thing, though I'm not running a boarding house. But this is a college community, and if we have 4 college kids living in a house, then we were counting this as a boarding house, because college kids are not a protected class. I find that very offensive. And the other communities, they didn't go with this route. And so what we're doing, we're setting up in my estimation, University Heights, a paper trail of kind of overextending things. So I really urge the city council to sit back, and I don't think that with this rental cap thing going away, that this is going to be the end of the world. I read an article the other day, 35% of all things are rental properties. And I'm thinking, wow, that's a big number. But it really isn't when you're considering, like doctors' offices, a lot of retail space is in this rental. But rental people are not the enemies. And this one article, which probably a lot of people have seen about Iowa City defies legislators, set up swift and vigorous legal challenges. There's a group of graduate students that, have sided up with the right on this thing. There ought to be a way that everybody can work together on this thing. I just really don't think that we need to sit there and figure out a way to restrict all this stuff right now. Let's see what happens. I don't think this is the Chicken Little syndrome where the sky is going to be falling and that University Heights is going to be a worse place to live at because we've done away with this rental cap. I think that we need to work together and kind of control some of these property management companies. I think that I need to improve my actions around here with the snow removal and stuff on that thing. I mean, I didn't know that this thing was remelting and stuff because I'm not over here 24/7. I think we need to be a more friendlier community. I look around over there when I'm doing things over at Olive Court, which I've been over there in the past few days, and I see a person out there, an elderly person mowing their yard. We should be a community where we go over there and help that person. Snow removal. I didn't get over here that much, and I've got a 4-wheeler at home, and I take care of my neighbors. I mow my neighbor's yard and stuff. We don't want to be a community where we're citing everybody on this stuff. We want to be a community where we help people. Because quite frankly, I don't even want to be a part of a community if we're going to go out there and chase and look for something to nitpick somebody down. And we brought up this thing, Sylvia, and this isn't an offense, but I don't want to see a person walking around with their cell phone looking for a person that, hey, this grass is 10 inches tall. That's wrong, sir.
You already have some people doing that.
I know.
But hold on.
I know they do that because I lived with this when we first came into this community, a woman coming over there and finding fault what we were doing, and she didn't even live over there.
Wouldn't you rather, Mike, wouldn't you rather get a digital alert that says, dear landlord, this complaint was received? I think it's automated, it's easy, it's technology, protects you and protects the community.
What I'd like to see is people, if it doesn't affect them, to mind their own business.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the council? Hi, Sue, you're here tonight. Did you want to speak? Did you want to come up and speak? No, you're just coming to watch? Okay. Why don't you come up? Because I have a feeling you came here for a reason. So you're Sue, yeah. Thank you. We got good assistance here.
I do.
Sue, you speak your name and address?
Yes. My name is Sue Bruell. I live at 124 Kozer Avenue. I hire a lawn service, and they come out spring, summer, winter, and fall. And, it's expensive, but I don't have that much equipment, although in January I did go out and buy a replacement ice chopper. When they weren't there, I was there. And, it didn't hurt me at all. I just made sure that I didn't jab my boot. But, no, they're a very reliable family who comes out, and they come out. I was very worried about them getting on the ice, but they did a beautiful job. So, you know, I felt sorry for people who couldn't afford it. But then again, I sold my car, and that helped. Why did I sell my car? Because I have a narrow driveway. It's a single-car garage. I have a tree here. I have a tree here. I was afraid to back out with all the idiots zooming up and down, no matter what the road conditions were. You know, I wouldn't. At some point, I would find myself backing out of my driveway or going head first out of the driveway, and I'd hit someone. So that was the end of the car. I figure I was close enough to the bus stop, close enough to the new transportation center that the University of Iowa has. Anybody can ride it. I'm very happy with that. And I basically did not suffer that much in the winter. And I'm sorry for people who do have cars. But, you know, that's life. It saves me money not to have one. And that's all I have
Thank
to
you.
say about it.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you
Well,
for coming
asking
tonight.
me. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Would anyone else like to speak to the council? Okay, we'll go on to streets and sidewalks. And Dottie, did you want Josiah to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Josiah's here. You can probably move up. Thank you, Josiah.
One item I have on my monthly report that I talked about was actually from last month as well. We need to do some repairs at the traffic signal down at Melrose and Kosher for the detection system to get the loops replaced that have gone bad. And I just got that proposal this morning and wanted to bring it to the council meeting and make you aware of it and get consensus if we can proceed or not. We worked with Advanced Electric to troubleshoot to find out what was going on, which took a while to evaluate each of the communication cables and wires. And then those all apparently turned out good, and so did the communication piece and the traffic control cabinet. So we're down to the loops. Must be bad. So the proposal I got from them is to replace each loop. We got 2 of them to replace at $950 each. So that's $1,900, and then he's got about $480 in time spent testing and making visits out there to determine the issue. So we've got around $2,400. I did check the cost for these loops is reasonable. It's actually much less than like when you check the DOT's statewide prices for repairing loops. It's more like $1,600 a loop. So it's, I mean, I don't think you're getting taken advantage of here. It's a good price. It includes traffic control and then working sort of off peak hours on Melrose, which is important. So that's the proposal. That's the issue, and I guess I'm asking if there's consensus or okay to go ahead and proceed with that. Well, go ahead.
You said, what was my thought? You said that they wear out, or whatever the right word is.
I mean,
they've
years and
obviously
years
worn
and
out.
Years and decades, yeah.
And a lot of people go to that intersection, especially coming from west from Kosher.
Correct.
That
yeah.
side.
Yeah,
So,
so this is sort of the old loop technology where they just saw it right into the concrete and put it down in there, and it senses the magnetic change from the. So like your new signal, right out here, it's video detection up above, but there's no video detection on that signal right now. So this is your method.
I had asked some questions of the MPO last summer about that streetlight down at Melrose and Kosher and Gulfview, because it wasn't picking up bicyclists in the road. So can we just make sure when it gets repaired that it picks up bikes and cars?
I don't know that it has the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was like the bike sensing wasn't working, but then they fixed it and it was working, but you don't think so?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Like I know when you have video detection, you can set it up to detect more items, and it's a visual. It's sensing visually,
But a magnetic one won't do it because it's not big enough, not metal.
That's what I've always heard.
Okay.
What is the cost for video, to add video instead of repairing the magnetic? Do you have a sense of that? Maybe, hate to put you on the spot, I guess, with that question.
I could give you a number, but actually on that signal down there with, how old those signal poles are and everything that's on it, there's actually no room to put video detection everywhere.
Okay.
And, one of the corners actually doesn't even have a pole, it's just a single light up there. So that's something we've talked about in the past, and the answer has been, we can't retrofit it on that one.
Is this part of the streetscape?
Well, that would be the chance to
time when you
replace
do
the
it?
signals and,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'd say go ahead with
Sounds
this now.
like we got to fix it, what we have right now.
You want to make a motion for,
I'd move that we accept Josiah's plan to repair the traffic light for 2,400.
Second.
okay, motion by Virginia, second by Nick. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Okay, I listed this, and I'll go quick, but I just wanted to list some of the work and the right-of-way stuff that's going on through town. Just some reminders that the fiber optic project, the UPN fiber that they're running conduits between Mid-American poles is still going on this summer. I have a note, I need to go and re-inspect the Iowa City's fiber optic project that went down Melrose and started last year. They had items to come back and finish up this spring and summer. I need to go re-inspect and see where they're at. For example, I think they reseeded your area there, but
Yeah. A lot of gravel on top, but it's receded.
the University of, this is a reminder too, the University of Iowa is doing building demolition of the University Club, and that work is getting geared up to start here in the next week or so.
What is that driveway going to look like? How is that going to change? Wasn't that part of what you were reporting, that the driveway is going to be changing into, did I read that right? Maybe not.
No, they're going to, so after they do the demo work, they're probably going to damage the sidewalk
Oh, just
there
damage it.
and the driveway
Okay.
apron, so they're planning to remove and replace it when they're done.
I see.
Yep. And as a reminder, that will take out the building and everything, disconnect and cap utility lines, but the main parking lot will stay once they're done, and then they're just regrading, like where the tennis courts and the pool and the building are, they'll just be graded and seeded, at least for the rest of this year. Then we may have some additional, noted on there, some upcoming properties that want to take care of drainage and tie into drain tile lines and things. One of them would be on Gulfview, where we had the ice issue this winter.
Okay.
And then another one on at the Melrose and George intersection where the George cul-de-sac is. They're looking to bring a contractor on to help them with their drainage on their site.
Yeah, good.
The last thing I had was an update, your storm sewer permit from the DNR. It lasts for 5 years. That renewal comes up later this fall, so we'll get that filled out. and,
Boy, 5 years just
submitted.
goes right by, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do we need to do an inspection of the drains for that, or is that annual?
That's annual, that's part of the permit.
Okay.
You just have to renew every 5 years with them.
Are there any questions for Josiah? Did you have anything, Dottie, you wanted to add?
We were going to sometime with Lisa walk the sidewalks.
Yep,
and
that's from our work session. That's still in my plan to get that done and contact you guys so we can
Yeah.
have something for the July meeting, a follow-up.
Okay.
You gonna walk during a rainstorm?
It stopped raining, so,
For good?
yeah. for,
I think it's going to rain tonight
Might be a little bit.
and tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's keep moving on. Thank you. Mayor's report that was submitted.
I wanted to make a comment about the signage.
Sure.
That
Oh,
Troy
yeah.
and I
I'm
picked
sorry. Yeah.
the sign that the council then approved. And so in his report also, he's indicated that they have been purchased and ordered, I should say. And the placement of those, we drove around the city and looked at the places that it would be most appropriate to place them. And so we have a pretty good idea, and Russ can post them when the time comes. And then I think we had a question too about there are a lot of signs in the city that say, parking 1 hour, you will be towed. There are a lot of tow alerts. Is the police authorized, or are the police authorized then to tow all of those signs, violations immediately? Because I think we had some discussion last year with Nate. And I think if it says tow means tow. And I'd like to see enforcement. But I think the council needs to decide if that is the way they want to function or not. I think if we have an admonition or we have a rule or an ordinance, it really needs to be enforced. Otherwise, why do we have it? Maybe Troy could make a comment about it. Because I think they need a clear message.
This dovetails with something that's in my report, so I'll jump in if that's okay. Towing of vehicles, I went back and have reviewed what I could find as far as notes and ordinances changes, and it would appear to me that it was direction of this council, because I think it was this council that established I believe it was a $50 unpaid parking tickets, then vehicles would be eligible to be towed. I would like to go through, I'm sorry, I left my notes over there, but again, going to process that's been discussed here before. I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that there is some sort of process.
How many parking tickets is $50?
Well, it depends on how many they are, but it could be, there's some $20 tickets and there's some that are less.
Okay.
The hanging over a sidewalk, and I don't have the form with me, but I think I can't remember if that's a $10 or a $20 one, but it would take numerous tickets.
Okay.
Right now, there are some issues with that in that our database, the database that is being used is something that is set to go away. It's the Square database, where they were entered by the previous chief as just unpaid bills or invoices. And when I came in and I asked Officer Tucker about that, what's done with the ones that don't voluntarily pay, he said that previous chiefs, going back to Chris Lyon and Nate Peterson, had talked about, and that Chris had actually sent out some notices to pay, which then generated some more voluntary compliance, but that vehicles hadn't been towed for outstanding tickets that Tucker was aware of. I'm okay with towing them. I just want to make sure. We're talking about, again, additional fees. University of Heights has adopted a $150 vehicle release fee. In theory, those type fees cover administrative costs, and again, in reviewing archival information that I'm able to access, it would appear that that was drafted to cover administrative costs and isn't meant to be punitive at all. It's meant to cover administrative costs. So we can do that. Council has approved that. I just wanted to make sure that that's council's intent. Dottie's talking about towing vehicles that are illegally parked, basically. In Iowa City, again, and I'm sorry, but that's my experience, we would tow vehicles for outstanding parking tickets. Once they made the tow list, we would tow them for that. Short of that, we would issue them a ticket for another violation. But we need to make sure that we have the database to track so that it isn't that they've gone online in one system and paid off their fines, yet officers are operating out of a different database that shows that they still have 10 outstanding parking tickets. Really, if the direction is that, yes, we want to tow scofflaws, chronic violators, then I will do what I need to do to make that process happen.
Are there places where we have chronic violators?
There are. When I look through the database, and I can cite one example here, just in the month and a half that I've been here, there was a home on Sunset that was occupied by some University of Iowa athletes that had a vehicle that overhung the sidewalk.
Got it.
And they were issued citations. There was also follow-up by police officers actually making contact with them. I'm not sure if Stan had any contact with that house or not, but I believe that he did. And we're told, the response was repeatedly, we are going to move that vehicle, it's disabled. Oh, it's going to be moved in 2 days. The following week it was still there. Okay. Eventually it was moved by them, but it took a lot of hand-holding to make that happen. That's another thing, is if a vehicle is overhanging the sidewalk
Yeah.
and it's overhanging, let's say 8 inches or even a foot, but there's still 2 feet or 3 feet, depending on the width of the sidewalk, for persons to get past, and all 4 wheels are actually up on private property, technically it's in violation and it's protruding into the right-of-way, and it can be towed. But is that the direction that the council wants the police department to go? Or would they prefer in that case that, again, there's notification? I guess how the perception is, and quote, how adversarial or enforcement oriented do you want it to be, or how much do you want it to be to try to get the behavior modified? And I just, again, I don't want to be addressing this topic with you a month from now or 2 months from now when people come in to complain that I've towed their vehicles and you all weren't realizing what I intended to do. So
Can I ask that either Dottie and Nick meet with the chief, and by the next July meeting for the rental housing program, a written policy be delivered to council?
And it can be guidelines. I mean, it can
Guidelines would be better.
Because it looks like it all exists. It's been pieced together, and like I said, it would appear to me, coming into it, that this council has addressed this and tried to talk to that process. I'm just coming in the middle again.
And it's
No,
good to
and
be
there-
an agenda item so the public can speak to it
Yeah.
if they want.
And there are some unique things, like I think the car hanging over the sidewalk a little bit is almost an ADA issue,
Correct.
which I think would take precedent, you know. So it's issues like that that are really more priority-wise.
And the police department, or maybe more appropriately, the community, the University Heights, certainly, in my experience, can legally do this.
Yeah.
You have the pieces in place. I just, again,
Yeah.
to make
I-
sure that
He
I'm
needs more direction.
And I wish we could, I mean, even in the short term, I'd like to be able to get more direction, because we talked about this after the last meeting, I
Correct.
think it was, the most recent time we talked about it. And I guess my thought is, currently, if they're eligible to be towed and they're hanging out because of the ADA issue, then it's a tow situation. And so if that's not what we're thinking, I guess I'd be curious to hear more feedback before we even go back and think about this more, because that's, I guess, just my assumption, that we're not gonna start saying, well, if it's 6 inches over, then it's not, but if it's 8 inches over, if there's a tire on, I guess I just wanna make sure I understand what we're even debating.
and tying it into discussions that have happened already, although most of this is probably occurring on rental properties just because of the transient population that's associated with that as opposed to homeowners. This also occurs at owner-occupied ones, and it should be equal
Right.
enforcement, equal action, regardless of whether they're rental properties or not, hey, we're going to go, I mean, so I just, again, I want to make that clear. You guys are in a unique position to regulate rental properties as a commercial enterprise. That's not what I'm talking about at all.
And it flows into shrubs and things over the sidewalks and all of that kind of thing, all of which are,
Quality of life,
yeah,
that's what I'm
yeah.
talking about.
I think working together for some guidelines here.
But just to be clear, there's no issue in the short term if there's a vehicle that's been ticketed to the extent that it could be towed and it's hanging over into the sidewalk. We're not saying put a hold on tows all of a sudden, right?
No,
We're just saying,
no.
okay. So I think I'm hearing,
Yes. So
Yeah.
I believe that my interpretation of what I've read is correct. I will instruct my officers to act on that, and I can draft guidelines of how I would like the officers
Well,
to handle
okay.
things. Really, the hanging over the sidewalk are the easy ones. It's, as we change databases, and I've already talked with Chris about how we're going to make this happen. I just want to make sure that we don't make mistakes that end up costing the city money.
And with the number of signs in the city, you know, just a plethora of signs with all kinds of no-nos. And with the football traffic coming, we really need to get it
Right.
cleaned up.
Okay, thank you. That answered my questions on the parking anyway, and I can draft some written guidelines.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
And as far as streets and sidewalks, I think we're sort of in limbo here as to how we clean up and improve the sidewalks until we get more input from our walk with with
Okay.
with the engineer.
Any questions for Dottie? You're done, Dottie?
Yeah.
We'll move on. Okay. My mayor's report I circulated. Do you have any questions?
What is the block grant for transportation, the surface transportation block grant?
That is what we got for the Melrose Avenue streetscape.
Oh,
It's
so
a-
the 700,000?
It's that type of a grant. It's a federal grant.
Okay, that's what
And
I was
that's what
wondering.
they call it. I know they've changed the name over the years.
Yeah, I was just
and that's
wondering,
the
how do we-
latest name.
Okay, I just wanted to know, could University Heights access information if applications are due later this year? So it wasn't clear to me
Oh.
what the coverage or the scope of that grant was. So it's just surface transportation? So
Yeah.
anything to do with like bike lanes would qualify?
Did you say
this is
bike?
this.
Bike lanes? Mhm.
Bike lanes,
It will
well,
be cycling.
it-
Also,
there's a TIP grant and a TAP. They cover more trails and those kind of things, but this is federal money for streets, so it would include bike lanes.
it's
You know,
it's relocating.
And then the Johnson County organization,
Right.
there's
So-
they all vote on who will get the money
Got it. Okay, because
from the federal funds.
yeah, so putting up the farmers market signs early in the morning, I have a lot of sympathy for the bikers who come down Melrose competing with the vehicles. And we really don't have a visual indicator to share the
It's
road.
all MCOJC, and it's the grant that we wrote.
I know, but I'm just thinking, if there's any money
But
for
they're
the short
going
term.
to change the
would
center
be
line.
nice.
They're going to
Well, the
put
money's
a
all
bike trail on each side.
Gone.
Yeah, this is distributed for 21 and 22,
So it's too late.
the current one,
Okay.
and it's been distributed. Yeah, and I can send you the projects if you're interested.
No, thanks, I'll skip.
Okay, now we'll go to hotel project update. And Greg, thank you for coming.
We recently had our groundbreaking, thanks to the city council for showing up. I don't know if anyone told you, but I publicly, thanked everyone I could, so I just want to say thanks in person again. But no, we got going that day, and I'm sure you have seen the trucks going back and forth, but we're digging a big old hole over there, and we already have the GeoPier contractor is scheduled to mobilize Friday and start drilling on Monday, and then the foundation contractor is going to be pulling in right after him. So we should have this building fully up in the air. I sent Josiah the Gantt chart, which is the scheduling chart, and we should have the building in December. We should have the building completely up.
Wow.
So, and then after that, the first 6 months of next year, we should do all the finishes and try to get it wrapped up and open by. Our plan is to open by August 1st or sooner. I'm going to be actually trying to get open up sooner than that. We've had some hurdles, just getting plans updated seemed to be a struggle with just keeping people moving. But we're going now, and I'm so excited. So, but other than that,
Are there any questions?
So what's the cause of the delay for moving the substantial completion date from December 2019 to August 2020?
it's actually numerous things. The major thing was just the blueprints, the plans. Just it was just push, trying to get the plans done, and that was the major follow up. And I've been mentally frustrated trying to get the plans done myself. I can't tell you how frustrated I've been with it. But I just sent it as soon as I got it. I sent it to Josiah the other day. So it's the plans. It was the plans with someone else.
I don't know if this is interesting to talk about, but there were two metal options I think you were talking about. One of them was quicker and one of them took a little bit longer time.
Yeah, cold form steel is like a metal stud, and they do this a lot in 12 plexes where they have they do it out of wood where they build the panels and they bring them in on a truck and they set the panels in place and they build all these panels in a factory. And they do this with wood a lot, and now they're starting to do it with metal studs, and a company called Waltech, and it's essentially you build these metals out of metal. You build all these panels out of metal studs, and then you bring them in on trucks, and it goes up like the Lego, essentially. Before, it was steel I-beams, a lot of steel I-beams, a lot of concrete, a lot of stuff. That was the construction itself is takes a lot longer to build steel and I-beams type structures. But the cold form steel goes way faster. So.
Right. Well, on the heel of Greg's comments, I'd like to motion adoption of Resolution 19-30, approving and authorizing the mayor to sign and the clerk to attest amendment to the PUD development agreement with University Lake Partners 2 LLC or its successor in interest, extending the date for substantial completion to August 1st, 2020, and acknowledging and approving assignment of the agreement by University Lake Partners LLC to Hotel 901 LLC.
I have one more question.
Okay, motion by Sylvia and a second by Dottie. Discussion?
When are you going to finish Triangle Park?
When are we doing what now?
When are you going to finish Triangle Park?
Jim and Dottie been working on that. I know nothing about that, so I'll have Jim come next time and talk to you guys.
Dottie told me they met
Yeah,
in the last week.
and Jim was going to talk about it, but I guess he's
Out of state.
he's with the jogger.
Half the time, he doesn't know when he's going on vacation. He just gets told.
She tells him, yeah.
Oh,
You're leaving.
wasn't that the way it's supposed to be? Okay, any other discussion? Okay, roll
I
call
just-
vote.
Dottie, I'm sorry. I have a little bit
You
more.
do have.
I'm
You want to
sorry.
ask about Triangle
Just
Park?
what is the plan? When is it going
Seems
to
like-
get done? We're almost halfway through June.
It depends upon how much money you all will give us
No, we have a budget. They have a plan that fit that budget.
this year and next year. We could use both.
Well, Jim
No,
needs to
when is
be
the
here to.
Jim
plan
has to-
that
Jim has
council adopted in the fall going to be done?
But Jim has to explain.
Jim's out of state. And
Okay.
We
Okay.
have a budget, he has a plan, he should just move forward with the plan.
I'm sorry, I don't know it.
The
And
video
either,
time to
but-
review.
And because
I
really
don't
doesn't
know.
have
Last
anything to
last
do
I
with
knew,
this
you all had
resolution.
picked orange as the fountain color for the terracotta.
And
So
you were at that meeting, were you not?
I was. That's why I'm recalling that detail. So to let you
So
know,
we voted on it.
to let you know that
We
that's the
voted on
last
it.
item that we have handled out of
You voted
Triangle
on
Park. But the instructions to Jim and Greg, the developers, was very limited and capped to a dollar amount. So that's
Yeah.
all I remember.
Yeah. So when are they going to do what we told them to do? Capped at the
When
dollar
Jim
amount?
gets back, I'll have him send something.
Okay.
You can come in anytime.
Okay, so there's a
Proper
motion and second. Roll call vote.
Herbold,
Aye.
Casada,
Aye.
Maher,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
carried.
Okay.
Questions?
Nope, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Really do appreciate everything.
So we're going to go to the legal report, and Steve, you put in a couple other motions we need, resolutions, and the chocolate is going around.
Right. So, Resolution 1929 approves the FY 2020-2080 agreement with the City of Iowa City for transit services. The contract amount is $39,142, an increase of 2.3% from last fiscal year. The remaining terms of the 2080 agreement are the same as they have been in the past.
I motion adoption.
Second.
Okay, motion by Sylvia, second by Virginia. Discussion. Roll call vote.
Casada,
Aye.
Maher,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Herbold,
Aye.
carried.
And then the council has the first consideration of ordinance 239, which it just kind of brings prior ordinances, namely 93, 94, and 95, into conformity and consistency with the recent contracts with the City of Iowa City for building and the Johnson County refuse for sanitation, recycling, yard waste removal. The old ordinances use different gallon sizes of containers and some other things, so this is kind of a mop-up.
Virginia, what exactly is happening to the old containers? I thought that's city property, so residents can keep it?
No, it's not city property. It belongs, residents can keep them if they want to, but they can be set out for recycling.
To recycle the bins, or they can keep them?
Or they can keep them.
Okay, I think that
Just
needs
don't
to
put
be
them out if you
clarified.
don't want them picked up.
All right.
But JCR will provide notice on that.
Okay, so first consideration of 239 is before you.
Motion adoption?
I'll second.
Motion by Virginia, is there a second?
Aye.
Second by Dottie. Any more discussion?
Who was the second?
Dottie.
Okay.
Roll call vote.
Maher.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Herbold.
Aye.
Casada.
With reservation, aye.
It's still going to be an aye. Carried.
Just make a note, please, with reservation.
It's not a thing.
And then we have 240.
Yep, the last item that, well, maybe last item on the agenda is first consideration of ordinance 240. So as you recall, the council recently amended ordinance 215, which concerns right-of-way usage and particularly addresses some small cell communications issues. The folks from Verizon were here either last month or the month before, I can't remember. And they had some suggested additional changes to our ordinance. We knew that those were coming, and I've worked with them and talked with them about their additional suggested changes, and that's what 240 is, or some requested additional changes to 215 that relate to, or that were implemented or requested to be implemented by Verizon.
Is there a motion for?
I'd like to ask council to, if I can please have an opportunity to vote on this at the next special meeting that we have for July.
That would be after the regular meeting, though.
Oh, then at the next regular meeting, please.
July 9th?
Some personal issues that kept me away from reading some of this information.
Well, it's going to have to go through 3 readings, right?
Well, it's first consideration.
Right,
I don't
but
know
once
what
you
council
start
wanna
making
do.
any inquiries into the language, you might as well just park the vote until all your counselors feel comfortable. Otherwise,
What does council want to do?
Maybe you'll feel comfortable.
Is there a timeline that we need to meet on this?
I don't think particularly. Verizon folks were going to come tonight, or they were trying to make it tonight. I think they will be here in July.
okay.
But I don't think there's a particular time frame. I mean, they they're like everybody. They're anxious and they want to get going on some things. But yeah,
And how is this different from the one we just
it's
finished?
not very different from the one you just finished. I mean, I showed you the
Why
changes.
do we have to go? Why are we doing this again?
Yeah, only
Back?
because
Is it redlined?
it is.
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they only because they asked for it, and I've been on the phone with them and said, "Gee, I don't really think this is changing a whole lot, but I guess if it makes you feel better, I can talk to the council about it." That's how I view it. I don't think it changes
I'm
things
fine
in
with deferring this for
a
month.
significant way.
If I'm deferring it, maybe they can explain. If they're going to be here next meeting, they can talk on their need to keep changing it.
Okay, is that okay with
That's fine.
Virginia? Okay. Okay, so anything else, Steve?
The only other thing, I don't know that the council needs to do anything with this tonight. I guess from my standpoint as the city attorney, I'm not asking you to, but I would like you to give consideration to, a policy or directive as the council about how you handle resolutions. And I kind of gave you the full version of that in my report, and I went ahead and gave you some legal citations for those of you that are interested in them. That's
I guess
all.
I thought resolutions had to be in writing, so I would make a motion that resolutions have to be in writing. I thought that's what we were already doing.
I think that's what we're doing, yeah.
No, in the last meeting, we didn't have a resolution for the adoption of the amendment to the budget.
So you made a motion.
I thought we did. Didn't you copy the last year? The language from the last year?
There was no resolution.
You mean a resolution sent out, a hard copy of, or a PDF?
No written one, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Is there a second to,
I'll second.
okay, motion by Virginia and a second by Lisa. Discussion?
I think that was a highly irregular occurrence. So number two, I think we should just revert to what we've been doing. So there's no need to formalize it. I mean, for the next 6 months,
there is.
it's only applicable to this body. A resolution historically has always meant in writing. Motions have been verbal, and I would prefer to keep the status quo with that arrangement. I don't think we need to burden any other member of the city staff to remember this. I think that by and large it was an irregular.
Actually, the city staff would like this to be voted upon, please.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, motion carried.
I don't have
Okay,
anything
so
further.
you have direction there.
Yep.
And then we'll go to Chris. You had quite a report there, Chris.
Just a few things going on.
Yep.
Oh, and I did have a question for Steve. Who asked this question, which was a very unusual question? Who asked this question? Did this just your motion, or who
Not sure about
directed this
which-
inquiry, Steve?
Oh, about the resolutions?
That's right.
No one. I had seen that there were some
It's in the report.
resolutions that I hadn't seen in writing, and it
Mm.
prompted me to look into, because they always had been in the past, and I thought, well, maybe I should tell the council how that works, and so that's why.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
My usual stuff was sent out. The one item I do want to highlight that the candidate information is out there for you to either download, or you can reach out to me. The dates are there that since we are a primary city, the first day that you can start to file your nomination papers is August 12th. The last day is Thursday, August 29th by 5 p.m., and they are very strict on that 5 p.m., and that does go down to the auditor's office and not to me.
Okay. Is there anything else? Unless they have
If they
questions?
have questions, I'm happy to answer them afterwards.
Okay, we'll go on to the treasurer's report. And Lori circulated the warrants. Did you get all the warrants listed?
Right. And I wanted to discuss one additional one as well.
Okay. So what was yours, Lori?
Here's some of them.
Did you said 900? Okay.
Is that a police
and
thing?
Sylvia, you had one.
Yep, and mine relates to a recent development in the farmers market for this season, and that is we have a hot food vendor who has committed to the season, and I have an inquiry for another one who is interested. Both, however, are asking what is the city's rollout strategy for advertising, since we're a relatively small market. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is I have disappearing items. Right now, we have the over $500 vinyl colored farmer's market that was used at the athletic club. That's missing. 20 feet worth of advertising is gone. So I don't know where that is. I also have another 4x6 colored, city, farmer's market city with the colored rooster, and that's also gone. So
Check that.
I've already checked. I've already asked PD to help me double check. And things are walking away, and I'm like, fine, maybe they're just, so raggedy taggy that people are making executive decisions and trashing them. That's fine. Or maybe we have the other ones where people really like them and they want to keep them in their home. I don't know. But the point is, I decided to take a different approach this year. I decided that the vendor fees from this past season generated some amount of money. And I have an email from Lori that indicated there might be $225. I'm not sure. So there is a contingency in this warrant that I am presenting tonight. I would like to get partial reimbursement for the investment of some flags that are being used to advertise a food truck at the farmer's market. And I need a revenue fund, but I don't want it to come from taxpayer dollars. The only line item that is not taxpayer money is the vendor stall fees that people paid last year. So those vendors paid $32.50 or whatever amount of money for the season, and cumulatively it generated X amount of money. And I would like to draw down from those vendor fees to cover part of this expense, which is $392.36, and that's with a promotion of savings of $151 that I would manage to get out of the company. So if there isn't any objection to that contingency, meaning if there's only $50 that were collected for vendor fees, hypothetically, then that's the cap of what this reimbursement rate comes from. But I think it's in our best interest to use the vendor fees, which we purportedly use to advertise for the farmers market, for an expense like additional flagging and related polls. And the flags just arrived today too, so I've got the expense.
So I'm just curious about these signs. Did they look in garages? Did they look?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where they'd be stored. I mean, where did you store them last year?
Right there inside City Hall.
Haven't we come across these at some point and said, oh, there are the farmers market signs?
Well, and the problem is that after the markets, they're just dumped in here, and they need to consistently be placed when you are bringing them into the same place. So depending on if we have a work session or a meeting, it could go someplace
Somewhere.
else. And I haven't seen any market, the stall fees for this year. Have you received any?
I'd not a whole lot, no.
I should have that money so that we can get it deposited this month. So I haven't seen anything.
Nope. Yeah. I'm still waiting for forms to get completed. So some of them checks are in, but not the forms. So I need to get everything.
But we've already had.
I'm focusing on this right now because it's an
Well, no,
invoice.
this is
I
actually
understand
an
that.
important item because it's cash
Right.
handling. So I want to make sure that we have the cash in to deposit
No,
this
I get
month.
you. I know the process. I give it to you, and Treasury handles the other aspect of it for duplication or segregation of duties. But
Lori,
the issue right now is
Farmers market,
yeah.
didn't you have something about farmers market budget in the recent past?
But it's
that
not just
you
any
were
budget,
gonna-
Lisa. It's the vendor stalls only. The fees from the vendor stalls.
But we don't have this money yet for the.
But this is the vendor stalls for this budget year. So in 2018, July 1 through June 30th of 2019, there was a line item in Treasury for for fees generated from vending stalls. And if they don't get used for advertising, they're just going to go back into the program, into nothing. They're not going to be used for anything.
Do you have that,
Why
Lori?
is that not city money?
So Lori, I have an email from you, and the email is
It's in the
dated
general fund, is
March
it not?
12th, March 12th, 2019.
It's city money.
And the header of that email is 2018 QuickBook Report. And in that report, I saw that vendor stalls were for $227.50. So that is what the vendors paid, not the taxpayers. This is vendors. So my asking council is, can we apply what the vendors have paid to use for advertising, which I think is consistent with what other farmers markets do with their dollars? And I think it's the cheaper version. I have tried Facebook. I've tried that. I've tried bringing a radio station to advertise and DJ at the same time. So I think this is the cheapest and cleanest way for an entire season.
I'd say next door is the cheapest way. That was brought up during the snow removal that we needed to be putting that on next door, and that's free. So
yeah, that goes there too.
Signs are just going to sit somewhere and get lost, apparently.
So I see $80.
That was used from the
Lori,
July
you had
18th
several
to
$100
May
that you were talking about got spent over a couple of fiscal years.
So I need to make sure that we even have something for vendor stalls for this. Jude, what is it? Yeah, this is the last time to make this request for this invoice. That's why it's being brought up now.
And if we knew this ahead of time, we could have researched it.
So this first
too.
column is
So it's a
July of
little
18 to
frustrating.
May
Is this
of
on the agenda?
19.
No.
No.
And there's
Farmers
$80
market.
right here.
I can't spend money that's.
No, I'm looking at your P&L.
We said no money, so no money.
That's why I said it's contingent. So if there's no money, it doesn't get reimbursed. If there is money, it gets reimbursed to the level that the vendor fees, stall fees are there.
This isn't on the agenda.
Oh, yes, so we wrote 2 checks this year,
Mm-hmm.
in July. One to Stonewall Pizza, one to Tentica de Durango.
Aren't they
Right.
$40 each?
Right, and that's for hot food vendors. This council approved it. That was fine. What I'm talking about
No,
is
you
the
had
hot-
something else that you were talking about.
the vendor stalls. That's what
Not
I'm
you.
asking for.
I was talking to.
Well, I'm clarifying.
Talking to Lori. She had.
We had $227.50 in vendor stall fees for the 2018 farmers market that were deposited in last
sorry.
fiscal year. Because fiscal year, the farmer stall overlaps fiscal years.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been money spent on signs. There's been.
But that was
Thought
3
you
seasons
had
ago. And
Something about that you said went over 2 fiscal years and.
Well, in June of last year, we reimbursed you, Sylvia, for,
Mhm.
I don't know when those were incurred, but sometime in the fiscal year.
That's probably some of the sponsors that came through. But I'm talking about vendor stall fees. That's why I
Let's go ahead
asked
and vote.
that. So the question is, is there any budget line item right now with vendor stall fees from the farmers market for this past one?
Not in this fiscal year.
I mean, no, but in your QuickBooks, because it would be an entry or a deposit in your QuickBook.
On May 31st, there was $227.50 deposited for last year's stall fees.
Okay, and which May 21st, what year is that?
May 31st of 2019.
Okay, so that would have been in the last fiscal year then. Okay, so then this question is moot. The answer is there's no vendor stall fees. So I'll just come back and ask when we get more money.
And maybe we can do some more searching for that sign.
The flags are here, Louise. So the invoice will be presented.
She already bought them.
You already bought them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
We need to get people on.
Okay, then you.
Hey, you all want
You do
hot
something.
food vendors. I've got to keep them here beyond 1 or 2 markets. Marco stayed here as a general courtesy because he knew a couple of members of council, and beyond that, he could not sustain the costs related to that, even with a subsidy tossed into the mix.
There's a subsidy.
Okay, so
There
we,
wasn't a subsidy this year.
We offered him $40 to come back as a setup fee, and he said he couldn't do it.
This year.
No, last year.
okay,
Don't you
so now
remember?
we're at finance and we have
Police
$900 added.
report.
And so, is there any objection to paying the bills?
No.
Hearing none, the bills will be paid by unanimous consent. Okay, and then, is there anything else for Lori?
Yeah,
Anybody?
Lori, I'm just going to ask if we can start a quick book 2019 farmers market so we can keep a tally of what deposits are being made into that line item. Okay, thanks. That'll be it. I don't have any other requests.
Okay, so we'll go to the police chief report and the committee report. Welcome, chief.
I'll be very brief. I'm not going to rehash most of the stuff that is written. Under tasks, though, failed to mention that I am meeting with Captain Bullock from the University of Iowa Police Department because of my schedule and his schedule. That's not taking place until June 21st. That's to go over UI football-related issues, traffic. Virginia had also forwarded me an email from Allison Kriegel, I believe. So I touched base with Allison and told her that was happening and promised that I would follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you. The report itself, just a couple comments. If you see something and it doesn't need to be here in the meeting, you can email me. Sylvia last time had commented she wanted to see a little more detail on activity. Perhaps I went overboard this time, I'm not
No,
sure.
nope. I think it was exactly what we needed to see.
Lisa had commented as far as format, and I will make that change. Also, during the open house, which again I very much appreciated, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I met with David Bowes, David.
Yeah.
David
from the
Bowes,
tree board.
tree board.
And
Yes,
spoke to him a little
he
bit. I bring
came.
that up because we had another tree come down, and that was all handled. But again, we spoke about process. Virginia has provided me with some guidance or with some names. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know too, that's just kind of stuff that hadn't been mentioned yet. The only thing that I would like to take a moment to discuss is the electronic sign. Sylvia had talked to me about this, as had Nick. Again, I went back through historical data and old emails that I could access and found where Nate had presented information to council for an electronic speed sign. Cost on the one that it would appear council had approved was roughly $3,000. I did not understand initially when Sylvia and Nick spoke with me about this, kind of what the intent was. So I also priced at a recent training conference that I went to a similar electronic sign, except this one was battery operated instead of solar. So I'm just going to touch on a couple things. The battery operated one is very easy to move from location to location. You would buy several sets of mounting hardware, probably 3, so that you could put on either end of Melrose or up at Sunset. So it would hit the 3 main entrances on our arterial streets. Electronic signs tend to lose their effectiveness. There's a diminishing return on them. People that consistently drive by them pretty much tune them out after a while. After 2 weeks, there's a noticeable drop, and that continues to drop. So if you want the most bang for your buck as far as modifying behavior, I would strongly suggest going with this battery-operated one. It comes with 2 batteries. We would swap batteries out. It would run constantly. However, as I researched into why council originally approved this, there was a tie-in to ordinance on racial disparity and gathering data and wanting to make sure that pass-through traffic was aware of the speed limit drop.
Right.
Pass-through traffic, if it truly is pass-through traffic, the electronic sign should be effective because it would be the first or second time that they're seeing it. If it's commuter traffic, then the sign will become less effective. However, the commuters also have less of an excuse about knowing what the speed limit is. So I really can go either way. Even if you went with the battery-operated one, I could have one of the places that it was mounted was on Melrose as you came in from the west. The cost is similar on each of those devices. They'll be $3,000 roughly, plus mounting hardware and shipping. Just originally when I talked to Nick and researched this, I thought the battery-powered one and the utility would be better. But again, after having researched correspondence, it looked like maybe council's intent was to have one specifically set at one location. So I can go either way, but however you would like me to move forward with that, I will make that acquisition.
Yeah, and I would appreciate feedback too. I think Chief did a good job summing that up. My biggest concern was not this chief moving it around. It was just the idea of making sure that, I know we had the speed trailer, that was dead for a little while, and, in the winter and all of that. So that's where my concern was initially raised. But I also, in kind of, I guess giving some thought to the chief's idea, Nate and I really hadn't talked about a sign that has this feature where you can move it around as easily as I'm hearing you can do. So I'm really on the fence too. That's why I was trying to get more feedback from council.
I like the flexibility of it, and when we approved the one that would be on the west, mostly on Melrose, I think, was that in conjunction with our focus on discrimination and the number?
Resolution, the implicit bias.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and I think that's less of an issue now.
Well, I think it's part of the discussion. I mean, public comments came in with people who clearly felt that it was an issue of non-disclosure, and for me, it's an issue of our reputation, we're a speed trap. That's what people know. So my emphasis is, I don't care which way we solve it, but I think the west side needs to have a dedicated sign that is prominent. I don't know if it flashes or doesn't flash, but it has to be prominent, has to be a consistent standard that any council can say, we had disclosure, you got ticketed, and we stand by our chief and the tickets issued.
And if it's going to be a dedicated sign, I would agree with previous conversation that would appear Nate had with council, and you might as well make it solar. It's less ongoing maintenance, cost is the same, and it will serve a similar function.
Right.
My preference is also for a dedicated one at the west entrance. Like when we put the speed trailer there, I actually got a lot of comments from both residents and then my own father who were like, hey, that's a great reminder, because I just came in off the highway and I was flying down Melrose and
Right.
All right, I guess I would, I would make a motion that we go ahead with the solar version.
And
Unless there's-
I'm not even sure I need a motion because you've approved it before.
Yeah,
I just wanted.
budget line
I just
item.
wanted
Or
to write-
consensus, I guess.
Yes.
I just wanna make
Guidance.
sure there's feedback.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to have a motion.
Okay.
Just for the
That's
new
true.
chief. So you have a motion for.
I second.
solar, and second by Sylvia.
Oh, and solar and dedicated on the western entrance.
Solar and dedicated on the west end. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay,
Thank you.
that's clear direction.
Again, if you read through these, if you've read through it and have any questions for me on the rest of the report, I'll be glad to answer them right now. Jeremy Stende is joining us full-time. He's remained as a
great.
part-time officer. But please read those, and again, if you have questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Chief. That was a very informative report. And Nick, did you want to,
I think we covered everything unless someone has a question about the Marietta tree issue. We approved it in the warrants. We had a late night kind of text discussion about how to handle that, and I know Troy, or Chief Kelsey, explained that he has some good sources from Virginia in terms of how to deal with down trees in the future. So yeah, unless there's questions about my report, I don't have anything further.
okay, very good. Thank you. Thanks, Nick. We'll go to building, zoning, and sanitation. Virginia?
Thanks. So we've covered the first two items. I just wanted to let everybody know that our service for new trash and recycling starts on July 1. Bills will be generated by the Iowa City Water Department every month on the 15th, and so that first month bill will be just a half-month bill for roughly $6. And then on August 15th, people will get their regular bill for $13. And then the other report I sent out was that Mark Vitush came to University Heights last week, and we did tree risk assessments on the perimeter of the Swisher property. A city has a duty to periodically review the structural integrity of trees that are on city-owned property. We did this in town in 2017. Should be done every 5 years, so the next round on that will be in 2022. We've never done this on the edge of Swisher, but since we just acquired that property, it was prudent to get this done this year. We generated a pretty big list of trees that need to be removed. Since then, one of them has already failed. It's been cleaned up and taken away, so that's no longer a risk to the community, but there's a standing snag that will need to be removed as a part of this bigger project. And there's no money, so I asked Mark Vitush if there's money available for cities to fund removals of this type. The answer was no, not specifically for structural failures, but a good number of those trees are invasive species like the mulberries and the box elders that could be removed as a part of a forest stewardship project, and there is money available for that. REAP grants are due August 15th, so I think we need to make sure we get a grant application in this year for some forest stewardship activities, and maybe we can roll a lot of these removals into that. Louise had an idea that we need to talk to Mid-American also, because along Glencrest, there is a number of trees that are right next to the high voltage power lines, and our power in that neighborhood goes down every single year because of something falling on those lines. And so maybe we can get Mid-American to come take everything down to a snag that can just be felled into the woods then, and that would really take the cost down if that's a workable option. So I'll make some calls on that and see if we can.
Actually, why don't you wait until the reps show up? Wait, no, those are Verizon. Never mind.
Go ahead and call.
That should be a public service.
Yeah, because it's on their easement. They
I
have
think so, and I
a
don't
right
think,
to maintain
I mean,
it.
they generally don't want people working around the lines. They generally want to do that themselves because they don't want to come out if there's a problem. So it's a good idea.
Have you seen
We need
them
to look
do
into
that
it.
very often? Because they do it in other areas
Right.
pretty regularly.
So this is what I was talking to Lisa about. When they come through for line clearance, their instructions are very strict. They provide 6 to 10 feet of clearance off the line. That's it. And there's all these standing dead snags that are just ready to fall into the lines. And every time they come through, I ask them, why don't you fell that? Why don't you just not cut it off at the base and get it into the ravine? And they say, we don't do removals. So like they need a separate instructions, you know, to come out and do what we would want them to do, which is to get all the branches down to below the power line so that the rest of it can just be knocked over.
Well, there have been a lot of power outages all over.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've never asked Mid-American if they do this kind of thing. I'll find out what the answer is.
Do you have a good contact?
I know who our rep is. Yeah. Donna Ashmore. No, there's somebody new now.
Well, Donna Ashmore just retired.
She just retired. So I have something
Yeah,
from
so
whoever
there's
the
another
replacement
person.
is.
I
but-
just can't remember
Yeah,
her
can't
name. Yeah. But I could even text Donna and say, give me the new name. But you have it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, another thing for council to think about is that one of the huge, huge trees is located in that portion of land that the Stebbins wants to buy. Do we want to go ahead and get rid of that piece of land and make that their problem?
No.
You know?
No.
Oh, in between the two houses is one of the.
I think we need a buffer around Swisher, and anything that is an issue should be absorbed by the city, because that's part of owning the Swisher tract.
I'm concerned about the public perception that we have a bond language that was very narrow and very specific, parkland and green space, and now it's turning into, it's expanding. And I just don't think I feel like
I think it'd be very dangerous
We're baiting and switching.
to
the
get
public.
into the real estate business. That's not our job as a community at all.
But I would be amenable to an easement.
I would not. I think a barrier, a buffer barrier.
Well, that's what I meant. Either we do it, or they do it, or we do it jointly.
We do it. We do it.
Well, one of the things that, if we're on this topic, I'd put that in my report. The yard in that between the two houses is not maintained very well. If the Stebbins bought it, they were looking to maintain it. Now there may be other ways that they could maintain it, but
No, they don't
it would
have
be
to. The
invested
city will
quite a bit.
will maintain it.
It's just right now I think they're mowing it, but it's weeds
Yeah.
that they're mowing short.
For
me it's more I'm really still interested in to understand what the foreman individual would take to get us the additional square
Yeah.
rectangle, whatever, and whether if we get to that point, whether it would be more of a swap of sorts.
Well,
I know that you guys, the two of you are not wanting to sell it. I'm
the
just
community would.
Well,
I'm just trying to brainstorm what
I don't think
options
you can
we
clump me
have.
with Dottie, because here's where I'm thinking. If the Foreman property were to be swapped for that middle property, that makes sense, because we haven't gained and we haven't lost. Well, maybe technically we probably will if it's, in dimensions. But I think it's worth having the mayor make a personal call to the representative, to Dr. Foreman, and just say, we'd like to do a swap. And the other question that I have is, the plat indicates roads leading all the way up there. I mean, is it our responsibility, or can we unplat the plat? Can we vacate or terminate part of that road so that it doesn't exist anymore? So it makes it less of a consideration.
The plat just is the city right away. And in fact, I don't know if it was Dr. Foreman. I think it probably was. Not sure. Somebody asked the council in the past, hey, if I have that lot, or if I do have that lot, and it shows there's a street going there, will you build it? And we said no. And the council said, no, we're not building that. That's not in our plan. The answer to your second question, the council clearly could vacate that that right away.
Well, I don't want to
depending
turn
on-
it into a private driveway either.
No.
Yeah, what are the downsides of vacating? I mean, you don't end up with
Private.
any other easement that he could get by necessity or anything like that.
I don't know. Now that the city owns the property, it's pretty hard to acquire easements by necessity or adverse possession or anything like that
Against the city, because sovereign immunity, right?
But then, you know, the city's only owned it for a short time, so I'm not really sure the answer to that question.
Can I just make one other note? There were 2 trees that were noted as being particularly dangerous. One of them already fell over, so that's taken care of. But there's, you know, a cottonwood on Glencrest that is. I emailed Mark and said, "Guess which tree fell over?" He guessed the cottonwood. He was wrong. Anyway, I just wonder if, you know, if we're going to look at funding these removals through a grant process, whatever, we might want to move on this one particular tree really a lot faster and have it taken down.
I think that makes sense because our experience has been that if we have to clear it off of a road in the middle of the night or in a hurry, it's going to cost more than if we get some bids. And
If it's a sick tree, I think the risks to the community are greater than the benefit of maintaining.
Yeah, I mean,
the
it
tree.
shouldn't damage any property. It'll just take the power out, maybe cause a forest fire. But so, if there's consensus on that, we can ask the tree board to go ahead and schedule that removal.
You want to make a motion?
Okay, I would motion that we pull the one particularly dangerous tree that was noted in the report out of the group and mitigate it immediately.
That's the.
Can they do that
Okay.
and submit well, when do we meet again?
I still need to call Mid-American about that tree because it's right on the power lines, and you know, I'll make that call tomorrow.
Okay,
but
and you're specifically saying in your motion the cottonwood on.
the cottonwood on Glencrest.
Okay, and
That
the
is
second
noted
by
in the report
Nick.
with location.
Because there's about
coordinates.
$2,500 left in that tree fund. So if we can get it in for this fiscal year, it doesn't go into the next one.
It'll probably have to go into the next one. It'll almost certainly have to go into the next one.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carried. Okay, and you're going to take care of that for
Sure.
me, Virginia? Thank you. And thanks for taking care of that tree. And really, we didn't have a storm Saturday. I don't know how that.
It's sort
It
of a
was just
sick.
that ready.
It was like you marked it on Thursday and Saturday it fell.
marked it too hard.
I mean, it
Yeah, you put
this
that little
isn't like,
X on there.
you
and it
know,
shook
this
it.
isn't voodoo. Like, you just look. The
Stay
last round we did in
away.
2017, there was one of those too. One of the trees we marked
I know.
fell before we
I know.
process the data.
That's why it's good to take care.
I know.
Okay, so, do you have anything else you want to? You're
I don't
you're
think so.
also gonna work towards this August grant.
Yeah, I'll talk
I
to the
know we
tree board
have
about that.
July. I don't know if I can help you with that or not, but you're the arborist.
Is that something the tree board would do? You have such
Work
a,
on the grant.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because that's a huge powerhouse.
I already
of
emailed them
talent.
about it.
Okay. Because I think they might as well submit it and see if how.
So, if there aren't any more questions for Virginia, we'll go to Sylvia. You're going to cover Resolution 1931.
That's right. So Resolution 1931 is a follow-up from last month's meeting, and it's a pretty simple one. It's a correction of mistake and error that the city may have engaged. And actually, the city engaged in the practice of collecting removal fees or costs for diseased, hazardous, and/or dying trees, which is the obligation of a municipality or a city. So all I'm asking is that we put to rest this situation by refunding, and part of the refunds would have to come either from the tree board or the city's general fund, and we have to do that as a matter of correction. We don't have options. And so, looking at the transactions, I asked Lori to pull a report. Okay, a report of transactions, and what I found was at minimum there's about $4,500 in clear entries in the city for which we know those entries involved dollars that were connected for a 50% cost sharing tree removal cost. So we would start with that process and move forward to figuring out if there's any more. So I don't know, Lori, I asked you if there are any other ways you could have designated or named any other transactions. Doesn't look like this. There is no statute of limitations for these types of refunds. There was no change. It was just being done. And so it's being done, and we found out we shouldn't be doing it, and now we have a correction. So hold on. So the resolution is very clear that we only refund those taxpayers and residents that we have a receipt and deposit record. Two things. We have to have received the information, and we had to have had proof of deposit. And those are the two things that are required. Anybody who comes up and says, well, I have an email saying that you received my check and now you're telling me you can't find the check. Well, I'm sorry, it's going to be your burden to demonstrate that you're able to track your refund based on all the public records that we have. But Lori's report is an official public record, and it clearly identifies a number of transactions that are 1/2 reimbursement for tree cost removal. And we need to start somewhere.
Are we going to refund the last round of sidewalk repairs?
That's a policy issue. That's not a tax code. That's not a.
This is actually policy too, though, because those trees were removed because they were dangerous, not because they were diseased or dying. And the state code says specifically diseased or dying. It doesn't say anything about dangerous trees.
Okay, then let's go ahead and identify the ones that the state code provides for.
It actually says diseased or dead.
Dead. Sorry,
Right.
thank you. I appreciate that.
So emerald ash borer.
It's not a
is
disease.
diseased. Then why did we take them down?
It's an infestation.
Isn't an infestation a disease?
No.
Okay, well, I think in any event, I just want some correction. This is not, we're going to not mince words because I'm disappointed that, it's taken this long to resolve this. This is an easy fix.
No,
And
I think this is a policy matter, and so
No,
I
it's
think
not a
we should
policy
not be
matter.
putting hurdles to making better policy. I think it's
N-
better policy to
let's
not
follow
make people pay.
I think it's good public policy to follow the law, and the law clearly says what we can't pick up money for. And if we picked up money for incorrectly in error, then let's go ahead and correct
Well,
it.
we
And
have a
we've done
city
that.
attorney.
And
Let's ask
city
him.
attorney has been. Let me tell you that these transactions have been occurring since 2001. City attorney has been present since 2001. All right, so
Directing us to do something illegal, Steve?
maybe you didn't know.
I don't think so. So I don't know the specifics of every tree transaction that you might be talking
That's
about.
right.
Lori just sent me a pretty good list. And that doesn't, thank you for sending it, but I don't know what those relate to. The city's ordinance is consistent with the state law. The state law says that the abutting property owner may be required by ordinance to maintain all property, between the lot line and the curb, kind of that parking area, except that the property owner shall not be required to remove diseased trees or dead wood.
That's right.
That's
So
what
we
the
have a
code
few of
says.
those transactions here.
And so then the ordinance says that owners of private property shall be responsible for proper care and maintenance of all trees and shrubs. So if the city said to a property owner, your tree's dangerous, we think you should remove it, and it's not dead or diseased, that's the property owner's responsibility. If the city said, and I do remember some of these transactions, but I don't remember the streets or anything that he addresses. But if the city said, well, this tree is in the process of becoming dead, it's dying, we'll pay half if you'll pay half, that's a completely permissible transaction. The city could have said, it's dying, but it's not dead, it's your responsibility. That's consistent with the state law. So if the city met the property owner halfway, that was a policy decision that the council made, and it certainly was in its rights to do so. I don't know of circumstances where the city ordered or required a property owner to pay for the removal of diseased trees or dead wood. I don't know of that, nor do I know of any circumstance where an owner has challenged the city's imposition of expenses related to tree removal or tree trimming. I would disagree that there's not a limitations period. I mean, the city council certainly can say, well, it doesn't matter how long ago this was. If we did something wrong, we should fix it. I mean, there's not a limitation in how far the city could go back with regard to the council's view of its policy, but there is a limitation for when somebody can challenge the city for what's gone on in the past. And it would generally be 5 years. So as far as I know, the city hasn't done anything illegal. But like I said, I was only given this list and I don't know anything really about
That's
this.
right, and you don't know anything about those line items. So what I'm requesting is that we adopt the resolution so that it can begin the process of evaluating the line items that clearly have a 1/2 reimbursement cost. There has to be some information from some tree record board, because the tree board has been in existence for 4 years now? And I think some of those reports originated from there. So we need to come up with an analysis of which of these line items survives the test for dead or diseased. I think that's the fairest thing that we need to do, and we need to report back to the public that it got done, and here's how many were impacted and here's how many were not, or maybe we found none were impacted. But to just walk away, scoot this under the rug and pretend like it didn't exist and there isn't a code section on it is just not appropriate response.
So the council's prerogative is its prerogative. The resolution is not consistent with the state law. It talks about diseased, dying, or dangerous trees. That's the resolution. The code talks about diseased trees or dead wood. I would point that out for the council's consideration.
Then I will align the language to the resolution. So I will motion that we strike the language for.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I have a motion. I'm placing a motion.
Second?
Well, nobody knows what I'm about to say, so there can't be.
We're discussing it anyway.
Right? So,
Discussing it.
these.
So how do you want it
So
just edited?
dying is stricken. So it would be diseased or dead trees in the city right of way. That's it. Everything else is stricken. And that same strike of language would happen in the whereas clause and also in the therefore.
I see.
And also disease, dying, or dangerous. Yeah, that's stricken in favor of dead or diseased.
Sorry. Okay, so that's how you edited. So you want to make a motion for resolution 1931?
Right.
Written with those corrections?
Right.
Okay, there's a motion by Sylvia for adoption of resolution 1931 is before you. And Sylvia made the motion. Is there a second?
And I've got to tell you that the motion is here because if we don't do this, the state auditor could come in and do the work that I'm asking us to do. It's homework. I know that homework, not a whole lot of people like to do it, but I'm doing a whole lot of homework for a lot of other counselors, catching a few of the details that they're missing in terms of policy. And this is a super important issue. If we took dollars inappropriately from residents, we need to give it back when it's due. We've incorrectly taken money away from the public, and we have corrected and reversed those transactions out in December of 2017 when we had Ken Stanley with certain fees that were being generated. Those were returned like they should have, but that was a different council led by Zimmerman, Haverkamp, Lane, Maher, and myself. So that council had enough common sense to know that it was the right thing to do, despite the fact that it made our process, look a little questionable. So all I'm asking is that we start the process for bringing to resolution whether or not we're holding.
Okay. Is there a second?
Like, to my knowledge, we have not removed any diseased or dead trees. I mean, everything we removed
Show
was
me
in the
the
process
record.
of dying or dangerous.
Then you shouldn't
So
be afraid of the resolution. Then vote
we
for the.
have not done
Then vote
anything
for the
wrong,
resolution.
and
Put your vote where your.
I don't
comment
hear a
is.
second. So
Can we
this,
move on?
we just need to move on. I don't hear a second. I'm not hearing a second, correct? I'm not. Okay, we're going to go on. Okay, is there anything else, Sylvia, you wanted
Nope.
to? Okay.
Was there any motion on the football letter?
Yeah, we met but I don't have any feedback right now at this time.
I know, what did you say?
The football letter.
Yeah, the feedback is supposed to be in writing, so wait
Okay.
for that. It's pending.
Okay, so Lisa, you submitted your e-government report.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any questions for Lisa? Okay, so we'll go to announcements, and everyone, July 15th at 7 p.m. is the next work session with rentals. And so we'll get that on the website. Are there any other announcements? Is there any objection for adjournment? Hearing none, the meeting's adjourned by unanimous consent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.